Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to this week's installment of Dark Side, Light Side. That's not me. That's Kyle Newman. I keep on hitting the damn wrong button onto the guest first. Oh, well, there goes the spoiler. My name is John Campea. Welcome to the show, guys. And, of course, this is the show where we talk about all things Star Wars going on in the world of Star Wars. We got to talk about the movies, obviously. We talk about what's going on in the world of television and Disney Plus and all sorts of good stuff. Now, Christian Harloff, we did let you guys know last week. Christian Harloff is off attending to a personal matter. Everything's good. Don't worry about it. Everything's good, but he just couldn't be here today. We knew that. But we are so freaking lucky that sitting in for him this week, he is... I got to imagine you got to at some point start getting sick of being introduced as the director of Fanboys. I just got to imagine at some point, but I never... He is the director of Fanboys and a whole ton of other stuff. He's also the author of my favorite D&D book of all time. And I don't know what I can say and can't say about something else you're working on, but I'll leave that up to you.
Coming up.
Kyle Newman is here, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks to talk for about having me.
How you doing, dude?
I'm a fan. I'm a long time fan of you. It was great when I got to meet you in the flesh, and we became friends. And
we did. And
I
you were on my
loved
panel?
Talking Star Wars and movies with you. Yeah, we did the Comic-Con panel.
Yep.
Which was fantastic.
You've actually done 2 panels with me at Comic-Con before already.
So it was an honor to get invited. And when you announced the show, I was like, hey, I want to be a guest.
I was so excited when you sent that message. I'm like, oh, we got to get Kyle Newman on.
I love talking Star Wars with you guys. I'm sad Christian's not here, but...
Yeah, and I know Christian regrets that he couldn't be here as well. But we do have a lot of people who are here who are going to be part of the show today. And we do have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a fairly big topic that I have kind of set up. And then we're going to go and take some of the questions that you guys sent into us using the hashtag DarkSideLightSide on Twitter. We're going to take some of those. And then the rest of the show, we're just going to take the live questions that you guys are sending. And by the way, 2 ways you can send in live questions. The first and preferable way is in the top line of the description of the video, you'll see a tip link. Go ahead and use that and submit your question with that. Or if you want to use the super chat feature on the YouTube live stream there, go ahead and use that as well. Either way, we'll get to your questions in the second part of the show. So let's get things started off with this. One of the things that we found out very early about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, was the fact that Palpatine, well, we didn't know how much at the time, but at least was going to have a presence. Of course, all of us remember at Star Wars Celebration, they played the trailer, and then you hear that cackling laugh at the end. The trailer ends, everybody's going nuts, the lights come up. Who is standing on the stage but Ian McDiarmid himself, who says the immortal words, "Run it again." And then they play the whole trailer again. Since that time, we've had another trailer with him basically narrating most of it. We had the very first poster that come out that's basically the entire poster is his face with a couple of, with Rey and Kylo fighting it out down on the bottom a little bit. So, I mean, we're starting to get a sense of he's not just going to pop up for a second. He's going to be in this movie. But do we know that? I've been saying for a while, Kyle, that my big fear about this movie, particularly in the light of the fact that we've seen him at Star Wars Celebration, we've seen him primarily focused in a poster, we've heard him narrating a trailer. One of my fears going in to this movie, and I don't know that they're doing this, I'm just saying it's a fear, is after all that promise, after all that buildup, that Palpatine ends up being, as I said on the John Campea Show earlier this week, he pops up with 10 minutes left in the movie. I'm alive, surprise! Oh no, I'm dead, and then he's dead, and that's it, and that's all we get.
That's a fear of mine too. Yeah,
especially, and which I wouldn't mind if it was a surprise, but the fact that they're pumping and promoting him so much in all the marketing, but it raises the question. At this point, listen, a million questions going around about how is Palpatine back? Why is Palpatine back? What is Palpatine up to? What has he been doing? What's his role going to be in this movie? And that's been the main question that a lot of people have been asking. So since we have you here, I wanted to ask you, what do you think ultimately Palpatine's role in this is? What do you think about the return of Palpatine? And how do you see his presence in this movie sort of playing out if you had to take a guess at this point?
There's a few things. I think he hasn't had enough presence in the marketing. I think the average person is coming into this. They're not sure what the movie's going to contain. There's people that track the spoilers. There's people that try and keep their ear to the ground and hear what's coming. I wish he had a little bit more of a visual presence in the trailer, more than just alluding to him. I know he's in a poster, but I think in the absence of having a great villain going into this film, because Kylo Ren's been bested spiritually, emotionally, physically. He's also, in text, turned his back on the past where he could go find answers or
Right.
or a Sith relic. He's turned himself off to that. Snoke is gone. We don't have conflict. Just as you're marketing a movie, what is the conflict in this movie? Obviously, there's resolution between Rey and Kylo. What's going to happen there? But what is the villain on a narrative level? I would have saved like the 3PO stuff, like, oh, my friends, my friends who I met yesterday. I would have saved that for December, like a nostalgic, feel-good kind of thing. And I would have led with a little more of the plot and the antagonist in it, even just a shot of him, more than just the back of his chair. So I think he's going to have a huge presence in the movie. I think we're going to get him very early on in the movie because the narrative of this trilogy needs an antagonist quickly. I think we're going to get him probably clearly in Act 1. And I think it's the same thing that happened with Return of the Jedi. They're bringing in a villain in a very physical, visceral way. So they're freeing up the previous antagonist, Kylo and Anakin and Vader, to be liberated, to be redeemed. It's all setting up for the redemption. I know people are like, you can't be redeemed. You can be redeemed. It's a hopeful story. Star Wars has always been proudly about hope. It's fantasy. It's fairy tale. They're not going to end in a tragic way. I think they're going to have to redeem this character. And I think the inclusion of Palpatine and the inclusion of him early is setting it up for an arc where Ben can find some form of release or redemption from the dark side. Maybe it's not full redemption, but it's going to be a release. I don't think he's going to go down as a dark side adept.
I have a theory. Actually, it was really more a theory that a few audience members have brought up to me, and I want to know what you think. See, one of my criticisms of the what they call the final trailer, which I liked, but it didn't blow me away. One of my criticisms was, look, marketing is about getting everybody more excited for a movie than they were before they saw the trailer.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the Emperor's cackle in the first trailer got a lot of people talking and a lot of people buzzing. Luke is Luke.
Yeah.
And I walked away saying, how on earth do you have Luke Skywalker in some way, shape, and form in this movie, and you have Palpatine in this movie, and the purpose of a trailer is to get people more excited for your movie, and you arguably maybe don't have two other characters that can do that more than these two characters? How can you show a final trailer and not show us even the slightest glimpse of either? Now, a viewer gave me a theory that I got to say I've been buying into. I want to know what you think. The theory that a fan sent into me was that, listen, it is quite possible that the very appearance of Palpatine may contain something in his appearance that could constitute a major spoiler for the fans. Or maybe the appearance of Luke, as however he's going to appear, could constitute a major spoiler for the fans. So one of the things I desperately and badly and pathetically hold on to is, they show Luke, what if Luke's in the flesh in the trailer? And they show that. Well, you can't do that.
That's a big spoiler.
That's a huge spoiler. So do you think maybe the physical presence of either of those two might explain why we haven't physically seen either of them? Or do you think it might be something else beyond that?
I think there's more reticence to show their cards just with classic marketing ideals. I think they feel like we have to have some surprises. The average person might not realize it, but they've led so heavily with Luke, with his voice being dominant narration. They've led so heavily with Palpatine.
Right.
Maybe they're holding back Palpatine because his appearance will indicate how he is back. It is sci-fi fantasy. There is arcane magic, essentially. I don't know if I need the exact biological description of how he survived, but we've seen Darth Maul survive things. We've seen other people survive incredible situations in Star Wars. So I'm okay with it as long as there is a passable thing, because he is the overarching villain of these 9 films. At least by including him here, you've rebranded the 9 films as the struggle against this rising tide of darkness, which is incepted by Palpatine, and it's going to be seen through by Palpatine. In hindsight, it might look like the Snoke, the 1 1/4 movies with Snoke in it were, a sidetrack. Like, why did Snoke build everything in the memory of the Empire if he has no association with it? Why does everybody look? Why is it a stormtrooper? Why is it a Star Destroyer? Why are these iconic things from a previous order that isn't his own in those visage? I don't know. Hopefully, this congeals it all together and ties it up and makes it look like Palpatine was somehow waiting or pulling the strings. Kind of like I thought Snoke should have been waiting for 1,000 years while the Jedi and the Sith did their thing, pulling the strings. Obviously, he's gone. That opportunity is missed. I think with certain things, though, having an antagonist like him, how do you beat Palpatine? And I think if it's a revenge story in a way, like there's a lot of meat there.
Right.
Like obviously, the Skywalker family did something to his plans between Luke and Anakin. They are the sole reason why he didn't fulfill generations of Sith hard work
and planning
and he's got to be doing something to come back at them. I think it has to be personal. I think that's why Luke is so heavily intertwined. It's interesting because in a sense they've denigrated Luke and his legacy a bit. So you're putting him back into this, and they're leaning into him so heavily, at least hinting that they're going there. It just shows that it needed this, you know? They spent a lot of these last two movies subverting, you know, the what the heroes achieved and who these people were as heroes. And I think they spent a lot of time with Luke being a character who is, Luke's more aware of his mythology and his relevance to us as fans, his dialogue sometimes, that more than it is to who he is within the universe of Star Wars. He's almost commenting more as his legacy as a hero to our culture, as opposed to what people in that universe really know of Luke.
Right. That's an interesting distinction. I've never thought that
it's all gotten muddled.
Really
it's all gotten muddled. You know, like there's a scene in The Force Awakens, which is very indicative. And if you stop and you analyze it, you're like, hold on a second, this is weird. But you go with it because JJ's a master of that, and I cannot wait to see what he does. But there's a scene, it's a Kasdan dialogue scene, and Han Solo's basically saying it's real, all of it. You know, we got chills when we saw that scene. It's great. Of course it's real. This is a galactic civil war. It raged on how many thousand planets? Yeah. Everyone knew about it. The Jedi existed. The Emperor didn't make us believe they never existed. What he did was he character assassinated them.
Yeah.
But if you take that scene at face value, what he's really saying is, Rey's like, they're real? They're real? You're like, no shit, they're real. We just watched all these movies. Everyone in the whole galaxy knew they were real. He just character assassinated them.
Right.
So there's a distinction. You know, so I think some of the mythology that they lean into is just a little off when you really, if you stop and you say, what do people in the universe know versus what we know or think? What would we like to see? And Luke is almost a commentary, as he was in Last Jedi, on Luke, the hero to us.
Right.
Not Luke as the in-universe character. Like the weight that's on Luke's shoulders is more from what we've put on it as an icon of pop culture. So I think they're leaning heavily into him now. And getting back into like how he could appear. You know, in the early draft of Return of the Jedi, there's this element of recorporealization where Obi-Wan and Yoda regain physical form.
Right.
And, you know, together they help Luke overthrow at the end of the movie. And I've seen, you know, JJ and Rian Johnson heavily mine old drafts of Empire and other scripts. And JJ's also going back to some of his own abandoned stuff from Force Awakens, from what we've seen just in design, you know, where they're going like throne room stuff. This is all design things from Force Awakens. So I think they're going back into old material, and maybe he will revisit that idea of Luke regaining some type of physical form again. Yoda almost didn't look physically the same as he did in Empire Strikes Back and The Last Jedi. And I've heard people say it's because, you know, Chinese market and people don't like ghosts, and there's a lot of times where you don't get ghosts, and maybe they are trying to ride the line on what that is, that it's not a ghost, it's something else, and maybe they're having to go further with that in this movie. I don't know. I don't think you can kind of change the nature of that. I think he's either a ghost or he's back. I don't think he's coming back in a physical form, but I do think he will probably be a heavy voice of reason for and motivation for Rey.
There's something that you said a little bit earlier that resonates with me quite a bit, which is the whole notion that Palpatine's presence in this film, I haven't thought of it in these terms, really does tie the 9 films together as one kind of an arc. When you look at it in the terms of that, why does Palpatine's character's reemergence do that for you? Like when you think about, tying the 9 films together. Why does his appearance in this tie that all together for you?
Because he can see the machinations, what he's doing with the overthrowing the previous government, supplanting it with an emperor, being himself, and gaining control with the empire. The after effects of that, I think, set up so heavily what we get in the sequel trilogy, and there is no context for what the First Order is in Force Awakens. You just go into it. But you could watch Star Wars A New Hope, and you felt the tyranny of the Empire before you even really met them. You could feel it in the way people on Tatooine lived, in the way Han Solo conducted his business and jury-rigged his ship. You knew there was this oppressive nature to them in the way people dressed and lived before you met them. There's no room for that in Force Awakens. You're just like, oh, there's a First Order, and they're here. And we don't really get the context of Hosnian Prime being blown up and all this stuff. It just happens. And I think the inclusion of the Emperor is a shorthand. It's a visual shorthand. He's one of the most iconic villains of all time. He's back. It says, wow, here's a great force of evil. We don't have to go invent something or write something new, which is what Last Jedi basically asked whoever is writing this movie to do. They said, we got rid of the villain. There's no more conflict. Your main villain that's taking over has already been beaten by everybody. He's kind of a punk. I love the character and I love Adam Driver, but where he is narratively, he's at this defeated spot. They've lost Starkiller Base.
Right.
They've lost the Supremacy. They've lost their fleet. They've gotten their ass kicked in the span of 2 days by every freaking person in the galaxy. There's nothing left. So what do you fill that void with? And the quickest shorthand is someone familiar. And the only person that's on the table for the Star Wars universe is the Emperor. And there's been so much EU about him. So because there's been all this ancillary material, it's not foreign to think that maybe you could come back. Cloning.
Yep.
These ideas are all common. It's common terminology in the Star Wars universe.
So
they have to reinvent the wheel to bring him back.
There's a theory out there.
I don't think he's a clone, though.
The dark ray we saw in that one little sizzle thing is actually a body created by Palpatine to manifest and possess. There's he's going to be a dark side Force ghost. He just was badly hurt when he fell down that chasm, and he's just been hiding out.
It's got to be simple.
Wounds.
They don't have the room to over-explain things. When they said Rey's going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi's granddaughter or whatever, you're like, how do you have the narrative time in a movie to stop and explain that she's the daughter of someone you haven't met who's connected to Obi? I don't think so. I do think the shorthand is what they're defaulting to in this, and there's no one more iconic than him, and there is reason for revenge.
Yeah.
And I do think he's probably found a way to stay alive, and he probably needs these people. I don't think they're going to go to cloning. I don't think he's going to come back as a younger version of himself. At least not at the outset. I don't know. I don't feel like they're going to overcomplicate things.
Right.
I don't think Rey, that's just a vision. It's a little cheap to put a vision like that in a trailer. I mean, they got the clicks they wanted, but I think that's more like Luke seeing himself.
That was my first thought.
That's all it is. It's probably a
4-second
clip. That's it.
Well, we will find out. Question here is, guys, for
I bet
you.
$1,000 that it's just
some kind of nightmare
or a clip being presented to her or something she dreams.
Guys, question is, what do you think about the reappearance of Palpatine, and what sort of role do you see him playing in the film? You either comment now live, or if you're watching this video later, jump down to the comment section below and let us know what you guys think. All right. I put up on Twitter the other night the fact that we're doing the new show here, and if you have a questions, fire it out with the hashtag DarkSideLightSide. Got a whole bunch from you guys. I've picked a couple here for us to look at. So let's get to the first one that you guys sent in. And the first one that we're going to get to that you guys sent in comes to us from Admiral Jack Barr, who writes, given the success of Mandalorian taking place in the Outer Rim, where it has familiar aspects but no established characters or planets, do you think it is possible for the new films post-Episode 9 to take place in the Outer Rim? Hashtag DarkSideLightSide. Well, I'll tell you what, Jack Barr. For me personally, the appeal of something like that lies in this. I'm one of those guys that I've said for a while, if you want to do a Boba Fett movie, fine, but don't expect me to be super excited about it leading up to it. I mean, I'll go see it day one because it's a Star Wars movie, but don't expect it. I don't want to see an origin story of Jabba the Hutt. How did Jabba become the crime lord that we know him to be? I'm not interested. I like stories that move forward. I want to tell the great thing about Star Wars to me has always been that the universe is vast. There are hundreds of thousands of worlds with so many potential stories to tell within the framework of the Star Wars galaxy that we know. The advantage of what you're mentioning is an advantage that The Mandalorian right now is making full use of, getting us into a place that feels familiar, but it's also completely different. And I like that. The thing is, I also think there's a high percentage chance that a lot of these upcoming stories are going to take place within the framework of Old Republic times. I think they've been kind of obsessed about that lately. So I think there's a possibility of that. So I'll just say this. What are the chances they go just all Outer Rim worlds? I don't know, but I think it's a decent option if they decide to take care of that because, again, it just gives us a clean slate to tell some different stories. Kyle, you know, there are so many different levels. We know there's the Outer Rim, there's the Inner Rim, there's the Core Worlds, there's the Outer Rim, there's Beyond the Outer Rim.
Wild space.
I mean, wherever the Yuzhang Vong, or however you pronounce their stupid name, come from. I mean, what do you think the chances are as they move forward post Episode 9 that maybe something we see on the big screen, whether it's from Kevin Feige or somebody else, takes place in those Outer Rim worlds, or do you think it could be something completely different?
I mean, it's the most vast Wild West territory to step into. They're going to be seeing success with it with Mandalorian. So of course, it's a rich universe. I want to see new and different planets on display. I mean, one of my gripes with what they've been doing visually, and I do like what Disney's been doing overall, is that there isn't enough visually new. I mean, you have like 15 or 20 of the best concept artists in the world working on Force Awakens, and they come up with fake Tatooine, fake Hoth, and fake Yavin as their primary planets. Like, I want to see different things. If you're going to do a desert planet, oxidize the rocks and give me a different sky. You know, make it feel different. And it's still a desert planet, but it just has a different motif. So there's room to do that. And the Outer Rim is rich with opportunity. As we've seen with all of the expanded universe, they've mined so many other great planets and they've created so many great planets that could be activated and brought to the new mythology from the old legacy stuff. So, of course, but I think it needs to be motivated by story and character. And if they're going to the past, it might land more on core worlds. Since that's just where the nexus of things were before deep hyperspace travel, and I think if it's afterwards, it could go out and beyond. Yeah, because it depends. New Star Wars should be new characters, and new planets, and you don't have to constantly comment on the old. Let the old be the old. You know, with the original trilogy, George wasn't commenting on like what other heroes did. He just told a story at face value without having to subvert what came before.
Now, if they wanted to do political kind of stories, if they wanted to tell political kind of stories, then okay, you can soak back into the core worlds. Obviously, a lot of politics. If you want to tell your Wild West, you got those. But I like what you're saying. This is an opportunity now, moving past Episode 9, to tell new stories.
Of course.
And I hope they take advantage of that.
Seize it, yeah.
Yeah, and if Outer Rim Territories helps you do that, my God, take advantage of it and do it.
Please, new planets, though. I mean, Mandalorian, I hope they keep inserting new planets into it. We're not getting those little titles on it, so no one knows where they are. Do the research. You got to figure it out or learn it. Maybe we get it dropped in dialogue.
I'm not gonna lie, that drove me crazy at first with Mandalorian.
It did,
but not having
I was
little
trying to Google it. I was trying to Google it, and from that wide vista of the planet as the ship's approaching, you could see it was streaked with lava. Things like that. So you're like, okay, this is like cooled lava rock, and there's a different aesthetic to it. I liked. So we'll learn the names of the planets, I'm sure. It was disorienting. Whereas I thought Rogue One suddenly had so many in the in the first act. It felt like a cops episode, just dropping names of like every street corner. It's like, I don't need all that either, But I think they're still finding what is the shorthand, what are the techniques that are going to be how they codify moving forward. Like Rogue One did one thing, Mandalorian's doing something else. I'm sure they'll find that consistent approach, but more new planets I think are warranted and desired.
Well, we'll see what they come up with. All right. Next question that you guys have sent in, the second tweet we've selected, comes to us from All Glory to God, who writes, if you had to bring Luke, quote unquote, back to life, how would you do it? Hashtag dark side, light side. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you exactly how I would do it, because I've been saying this from day one. How I would do, after I saw The Last Jedi, I walked away and said, look, I understand the implication is that Luke is dead. I get it. But No one in the movie actually said he's dead. I understand it's implied. And 95% chance he's just dead. But I said, I'm holding on to this 5% chance that he's not actually dead, but he's actually alive. And somehow he just like force transported himself somewhere else. Obviously, the implication with the falling clothes and everything, a.k.a. Obi-Wan, a.k.a. Yoda, obviously the implication is he's dead.
Took his hand with him.
And his hand went with him. So I would say this. If I'm running the ship over there and they come to me and say, okay, we want you to do an episode 9, but we want Luke to be alive in it, then I would just go back to going what you were saying. I would go with what is the most simple explanation. The most simple explanation to me would be Luke never did die. Just like his force projection was a new technique that we had never seen on screen before, I would say, okay, if Luke has to be alive, then the most simple thing, he never died in the first place. He simply realized, well, now that they know I was force projecting, they're going to be able to figure out where I am physically. I can't be here anymore. I got to leave, and I'm going to do this technique, and he's gone. Is that a perfect solution? No. Can I think of 10 problems with that solution? Yes. But I think it's the most simple solution. So if I had to come up with a way that Luke is still actually alive, that I don't do a resurrection thing. I do it that way personally. But anyway, Kyle, you get faced with the task. You get charged with this as a director. In this film, we need Luke alive by whatever means necessary.
But isn't he alive as a spirit? Isn't he still just as vibrant in the cosmic force?
But the implication is they say to you, we want him actually a physical being. He's physically alive.
And flashbacks are not an option.
And flashbacks,
I don't like flashbacks in Star Wars.
They
got no business.
I agree.
No business in the visual vocabulary of Star Wars.
If it's a nightmare, I don't mind it.
No,
if it's
George
a
laid out
dream.
6 movies, and there were no flashbacks. We don't need them.
So, how do you do it then? If that's the mandate left on your plate.
I think what you're saying is probably the best. Every solution is going to come in hand with a slew of problems.
Right.
You just have to eat them up.
By the way, I'm going to have you get a little closer to your microphone.
And I think you have to creatively you have to cleverly accept it and write it in a smart way. You don't need a lot of jargon. You don't need a lot of explanation. It's just something quick and smart and believable, like a fantasy shorthand to it. And like they're going to know where he is because he projected himself there. His position was already compromised. He had to leave. I think what's more important, and if you want to bring him back, sure. There's a million ways to bring him back. That's as good as any. I like your way. I don't want a Jesus type resurrection.
Right.
Luke is also he never was the chosen one. He was there to unlock his father, who was, up until now, the chosen one, the son of sons, the one who would bring balance. That's not Luke. I don't think Luke has those properties to him. But what's most important is that Luke comes back with purpose, that he's learned something from his mistakes in Last Jedi, that he's used and he's wielded as a character properly and judiciously. I think less is more with Luke. And maybe Luke is this connective tissue to some of the other spirits to the beyond. Maybe it helps bring a larger chorus of them back, including Qui-Gon. I don't know.
Well,
Ray is now gone. And Ray is now in the same. I mean, not Ray. Leia is now in the same situation as Luke, where she's crossed over. They're clearly indicated that she had a great many Force powers, more than we knew, and I think she might be in the same boat as Luke. If it's something that Luke can do, Luke wasn't trained in it unless he studied these things. But we do know the people that did cross over were trained in it. To even become a spirit. So where would Luke have learned this? And obviously he's sitting on Octo amidst all these texts and this ancient history. And I think he went there to go learn from the past. So maybe it's a technique he did learn there, which could be explained that way. I think that's sufficient. But I do think probably never dying and migrating somewhere safe and then only emerging at the very end in a time of need, like one last time. He probably
it's kind of Gandalfian.
He does need to die, though. I would have rather see Luke and Leia die in Last Jedi at the same time, whereas Luke goes out protecting and saving, reinstilling the Jedi. It's his last act, and Leia goes off sacrificing herself in lieu of Holdo, saving the thing that meant the most to her, which was the rebellion. I love them coming in as twins and going out as twins.
Ooh, that's poetic. I like that.
Yeah, she even flies right through a hologram of the supremacy. It would have been great foreshadowing. But we didn't get that. So I would like to see them both as spirits. And I think if Luke comes back, maybe he brings Leia with him. That might be a cool way to bring it.
It's tough, though, because they're only using recycled footage of hers. Like
only?
That's what they said. I mean, I don't know if they're sticking to that.
I think that was their mantra.
Think so?
I wouldn't be surprised if they went further, coaxed their material further by putting some stuff onto a body of someone else, like her face. Because
they swore up and down they weren't going to do that.
Like,
you think
like
they
3 days after she died, they did.
Right.
Out of pure respect. And maybe her family was like, you know what? This is great. Honor her. Go further with it. You know, maybe there's permissions given beyond that. I think them challenging themselves not to is commendable, and it's respectful, and but it's not like they made up this movie after she died.
Right,
I think she knew she was going to be a part of it. She was familiar with where the story was going, so it wasn't like we're going to denigrate her legacy and her character and stick her into something she had no clue what it was. I think she knew that she was a lifer in Star Wars.
Right, yeah.
And I think maybe there's family permission to explore it further. I think the crux of the performance is going to be what previously existed. I think JJ was just on, was it the Today Show or something yesterday, talking about how they had 5 or 6 scenes left over.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, we're getting tricky. We're getting tricky. We're getting a villain that's dead coming back. We're getting Luke, who they need in marketing and in this movie heavily. I think they need to properly finish Luke's arc. They need these characters back. But I do think he's probably going to just be a spirit.
All right. Let's move on now to our third Twitter question that you guys submitted to us. And the third one today comes into us from Mark Anthony Rodriguez, who writes, recently started watching Rebels on Disney Plus, and I honestly love it. The art, the original trilogy music and visuals, the characters. I know you weren't a fan. Oh, that's not true. I am. You might be thinking of Clone Wars. I'm not a fan of Clone Wars. I was very much a fan of Rebels. Anyway, I know you weren't a fan, so why do you think there's such a divide between Star Wars fans when it comes to the animated stuff? Well, first of all, Mark, let me say this. Regarding Rebels and the things that you were just saying about you honestly loved it, the art, the original trilogy music, all that kind of stuff. When Rebels was coming out, I was hesitant to jump on board with it because despite the fact that a lot of Star Wars fans are fans of the Clone Wars, I'm not. I don't hate it. I'm not a big fan of the Clone Wars. And I don't know if it's because I got instantly soured by the Clone Wars movie that came out first or whatever, but for whatever reason, one reason or another, it never really connected with me that well. So I was hesitant to try Rebels. And I had a friend of mine who's at Lucasfilm said, I really think you might want to try this. And I remember sitting down and I watched, Anne was with me, and I watched the first episode, and I can't remember, it was some advanced screening of it, and we watched the first episode. And I remember I instantly picked up my phone and I started texting Christian Harloff. And I said to him, I'm watching Rebels right now and I can't quantify it. I can't give you a logical reason why. And I can't explain why right now. But I'm watching this thing, Rebels, and it just feels like Star Wars to me. And I haven't felt this in a while. And I think a part of what you were saying in your question, let me bring up your question again. We were saying the art. Having some of the not just thrown in for the sake of throwing it, but the properly timed and used original trilogy music and a sense of the visuals. And I think for the most part, one of the things I've been saying a lot about what I want in my Star Wars movies isn't anything specific. You just need to give me a sense of adventure. If I feel that sense of adventure, I'm on board with you. And something about Rebels. Now, I didn't love every episode of Rebels. I didn't love every season of Rebels. But I quite enjoyed Rebels right up until the end of it. And so I liked it quite a bit. And those are the reasons why. But I don't know. You mentioned he asks Kyle, why do a lot of the Star Wars fan base have a lot of divide over the animation? I'll be honest with you. While I'm personally not a big fan of Clone Wars, I've personally found that the vast majority of Star Wars fans are. I find that despite me being the odd duck out, I don't really feel a big divide over the audience when it comes to the animated stuff. I've personally found that generally speaking, the Star Wars fan base kind of likes the animated. So I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I think in general, there's an inherent stigma to animation, especially in America.
Well, that's true too, yeah.
It's perceived as more youthful, juvenile. Animation also, you oversimplify forms and colors. Aesthetic is kind of treated differently. There's an elasticity to it, which also isn't congruent with the hard production design, the lived-in universe of Star Wars. It's hard to transcribe that into animation, at least in the style they're doing it. So you're having to take these broad strokes, and you're hoping that the broad strokes contain enough of the Star Wars DNA to be familiar, right. to convey the breadth of what Star Wars is, which is, screwball comedy, sci-fi, serial, samurai, Western, fantasy. It's an amalgamation of all these things. It's this alchemical explosion, and it has its own unique genre and identity. So what of those aspects are you going to distill down into this visual animation form that can then be reactivated into Star Wars? So it's hard. Dave is a master. Dave Filoni was trained by George Lucas. I think he's a wonderful disciple. I think he's learned enough from George to then distill it down and make something new and fresh with it. I think by the time he got to Rebels, he was a master. I love a lot of Clone Wars, but for me, there's an inconsistency. I think the narrative, the lack of a narrative timeline, it affects it. Whereas Rebels, the reason I do love Rebels and appreciate it is there is it's a thrust forward. It's a group of characters going through this arc in a linear narrative way. It felt like a D&D group. Everyone's leveling up. Each season they leveled up. That felt great. It has that quality of the original trilogy. Rebels jumped around so much. It's really Ahsoka's show. Really, she's the new character in this.
Clone Wars, you mean?
In Clone Wars, she's the new character. And in Rebels, it's Ezra. But I think the arc is much more tangible and relatable with Ezra, how they presented him. And not that I don't like Ahsoka. I think she's an awesome character, a wonderful character.
That's okay. I don't. That's fine. I'll not like her for both of us.
I like her. She's not my favorite. She ain't Qui-Gon.
Right.
But look, she's cool. So there's natural barriers of entry for animation. I think probably it gets 1/10 of the attention. I mean, it's even airing on Disney Junior or Disney XD. I mean, these shows weren't put on the platform that the movies or even the live action show is being put on. Look at it; it's the centerpiece of Disney moving into to dominate the digital age of streaming. I mean, they're not putting animation on it. They're leading with a live action Lady and the Tramp. They're leading with live action Star Wars. They're leading with live action Marvel. Live action is where it's at. And I studied animation. I'm a huge animation fan, so I love it.
So the two things of animation they did do are shorts. You had the Forky Asks a Question. That's a short. And they did Float, a Pixar short. Both very good, by the way, but you're right. The little animation they did, just little.
Lady and Tramp's almost animation. There's so much, dogs coming to life, and you watch. It's impressive, but those lines are blurred. Like, is Lion King, the new Lion King, is it animation? We're talking about an animation, a heightened, stylized animation. There's Western animation, Eastern animation. I think obviously Filoni takes a lot of influence from Eastern animation.
Yeah, he does,
which is great, and he's making it something fresh and new, but it has those limitations because the aesthetic of Star Wars original trilogy, like what Roger Christian was production designing, the lived-in world, the lived-in Falcon, like the weight of a saber in your hand that's been pieced together of welded metal, like the model work, it has a different tangible quality. And I think a lot of people just treat it as a lesser version of Star Wars. Is that gap closing? I hope so. Resistance is even more elastic, maybe too elastic for me.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very kiddie and very goofy, and there's a lot of screwball, sketchy, kind of gaggy stuff in it that's not... I mean, I would be like, George would not do any of this. And if I have to stop and say, would George Lucas do this? Then it takes me out of it a little bit.
But by the way, I wanted to point something out here. This is a nice transition, actually. Here's my segue. All right, we're talking about Rebels,
right?
One of the main characters, aside from Ezra, of course, probably the second most important character in the show is Kanan Jarrus.
Awesome character.
Who is voiced by a mutual acquaintance of ours, Freddie Prinze Jr., does the voice of that. And this is a good time for me to segue into this, is that I wanted to promote this because you and Freddie Prinze Jr. right now, you guys with a few other people.
Taylor Gray, who's the voice of Ezra Bridger.
There you go.
We're bringing them all back.
And somebody who used to do... Jedi Council with me, Maud Garrett, who my audience knows, and a few other people.
I do a lot of D&D with Maud.
There you go. But speaking specifically, you guys are starting a brand new show.
And Claire Grant.
Who
played a bounty hunter on Star Wars Clone Wars.
And your new show is you guys playing the Star Wars role-playing game, not the better one that I play, but you're playing the current.
And let's give respect to the West End Games D6 system. It's a goddamn classic. I probably played more West End Star Wars than Dungeons and Dragons growing up, just because I am a Star Wars fanatic,
right?
More than anything, first and foremost,
tell
it's
everybody
Star Wars
about the show.
And we all love that game system. We all love Star Wars first and foremost,
right?
We love playing in that universe. We love living in that universe. They loved creating that universe. We love being fans of that universe. We're all still fans. And we all love role-playing games. And Freddie and I were talking, and they had done a series before that it was Geg Wars, and Sam Witwer was the game master. And Sam brought in most of the cast.
Your D&D book with
Sam
you, by
Witwer,
the way.
The voice of Darth Maul, and Starkiller, among many other awesome characters. In film and television. Sam is my co-author in Dungeons & Dragons Art and Arcana. And Sam was the dungeon master for Freddie Prinze's network's first season of Star Wars. They did 6 episodes, and it was Vanessa Marshall and obviously Taylor and Freddie. They all came in as the Rebels cast and played other characters, but in the Star Wars game system.
Yep.
So they did that, and I think they had a lot of eyeballs on it, and it was great fun. And he said, "Hey, would you want to do something if you like Star Wars role-playing game? You've played it. I played it for a couple of years, the Fantasy Flight game system." And I drafted in my game master from that, Jeremy Malul. And we just kind of assembled a team of people we thought would be passionate and unique and fun. And we've been play testing it together, like what our group is, for the last 2 months. So we have this great vernacular going in and a really nice shorthand. So we're a unit, and it's freaking fun.
So where are people going to be able to see this? Like, people are going to want to watch you guys, this great collection of people, you guys. What is the name of the show? Where are they going to be able to watch it? When are they going to be watching?
It's called Star Wars Galaxy of Crime. It's part of what Freddie has. It's called Geghead.
Right.
And Geghead's like his gaming network. I think most of the details are coming forward soon. Right now, that's where you can watch it. There will be live stream, and there will be ways to watch it after the fact. It's a 12-episode run initially, and when I say that our game master is spectacular, I mean it. Like, he is one of the best game master, dungeon masters I've ever come across. His attention to detail is impeccable. He creates this rich world, and he's constantly weaving in your personal story into it,
nice,
but leaving it there for you to find it and embrace it, not stuffing it down your throat, not railroading you. He's just crafts this incredible story. So we did probably almost 60 sessions of Fantasy Flight games, and we had our home game, and he would start every episode with a crawl, with music, and you just get picked up, and it felt very serialized, and it was just, loaded with cliffhangers and just pure adventure, All the benchmarks of Star Wars were programmed into it, and he gets it. And so having him on board to do this, I think, is going to be great, and seeing how he crafts a Star Wars story with all of us. So you can find it on Geghead, and I'm going to post a lot of details in the next few days on our schedule. December 4th is the initial episode, 5 p.m. Pacific time. We're kicking it off, and we're going to be every other week for 12 weeks. We might have a little holiday blip, but for the most part, we're coming at you Wednesdays.
And you're busy in role-playing games, because you also play in a regular game. I believe it's ongoing. Like, you and Joe Manganiello, you play.
Our game is.
You guys have a D&D game that you guys.
I don't want to say it's the game to be in, but it's the game to be in. It is awesome. I mean, first of all, Joe runs an incredible game. He is a master storyteller. He's a tremendous actor, but he cares so much. The research he puts in, like the detail and the carnage. You know, it's an intense game, and he has a big table, an unruly, I would say, almost unruly table. And we're talking about the Big Show. We're talking about Vince Vaughn, Tom Morello. They're the regulars. Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. Benioff and Wise.
You've had them in the game, yeah.
They're in now. They're all other characters. We're on this group thread, and it's just like all people care about. The world's going on around you, and everyone's just talking about what we're doing with the loot. What's our game plan for raising an army to take down these dragons? Who's getting magic armor? Who's getting what? People are obsessed, and we've just it's a lot of Joe's friends, you know, and some people from my group that I was doing on Tuesday nights, and merged to this super group, and we've added all these people, and there's like a wait list of people that want to get in. So we're gonna, you know, have some guest stars and stuff. But right now we don't put it out there other than some pictures.
Right. But you play in Joe's house, right? You
we play in Joe's basement. It's his. It's a wine cellar that's been rechristened the Gary Gygax Memorial Dungeon. We've had Luke Gygax play there, and many old D&D stalwarts have come through. Some legends. We've played some unproduced old school stuff. You know, Luke ran us through the ruins of Castle Greyhawk, which was never published. So we've gotten to do some really cool things. But Joe has curated this wonderful group, and he's got every single toy, mini piece of terrain you can imagine. You're like, all right, I'm twin polymorphing these guys into these giant apes. Boom, they're there. Oh, there's there's a T-Rex. Boom. I'm not even kidding. Like every obscure mini, he's like, I've got 4 of those. Pulls them out, like everything. So it's the biggest D&D toy chest, I would say, in the world for gaming. And this group is just, it's exhilarating to play with these guys. You know, everybody brings their A game, and you know what? It's not a soft game. It's a brutal game. There's a lot of cursing and trash talking. It's an R-rated game. Yeah, and it's not like, but in a fun way. You know, it's like an old school thing, but it's still like a really fun, healthy, forward-thinking game too. It's awesome. So it embraces like the old game you remember, you know?
Yeah.
And he pulls a lot of old material up too, which is cool, like from old books and old plot lines and stuff from previous editions. So, because he's a scholar of it, you know, he knows this all. So he can go enrich like a 5th edition module like Tyranny of Dragons and layer it in with all this stuff from our childhood. So
just one more quick time. The network, Freddy's Network, where people are going to be able to watch your Star Wars campaign again, is called
Gegghead. Gegghead.
And that's Freddy's stuff. And I'm looking forward to watching that because there's a trailer. You guys have put a little teaser out.
Yeah, I think we're going to drop that later today.
Right. It's going to be good to see.
Yeah.
All right, guys, listen. For the rest of the show now, and by the way, guys, get involved in real tabletop role-playing gaming. It's just, there's nothing better to do with a group of friends on any given night of the week, so get more involved in that. All right. That's all said now, guys. We're going to spend the rest of the show taking your live questions. I know there's been a whole bunch of them come in, so we're going to rifle through them pretty quick. So hang on tight. Let's get over to it and start taking the live questions you guys have sent in. And you know what? Before I did the show, I forgot to set it up. One second. I'm going to be able to set it up now. Give me 1 second here. Almost there. Okay. Let me bring it up right now. All right. And we're going to start things off with John and Christian. And Christian is obviously not here right now. Starting with Andrew Gifford, who writes, "Hey John, I just wanted to clarify about my Palpatine question. What I meant was there's no setup for him in the context of the sequel trilogy just to show up at the end." Yeah, so that came in on the John Campea Show earlier today, and somebody said, bringing in Palpatine, you have no setup. And my kind of feeling on that was, we had 6 films of setup. Like, we all know who Palpatine is. Like, we don't need Palpatine showing up in other films to set up Palpatine in the last one. That's how I kind of feel about it.
I understand how his question, and it's not one that is it's full of merit, because also to reintroduce Palpatine, in a sense, the question for me was, if they go this way, does it devalue the sacrifice of Anakin Skywalker? Right. Was he the chosen one?
I insist it does not.
And did he? I don't know yet. It could very well, depending on how they weave it in. And obviously, we could find out that what exists in this movie is, Andrew Gifford, what exists already in the movie, if they appropriate it correctly, could be that the reason Snoke did everything in the way he did, why they look like stormtroopers, why we have these familiar ships, and why it's broken down to military the same way the Empire did, is because this is something that Palpatine had been gaming all along, and Snoke was an extension of that. So it could feel very organic, or it could feel extremely dissociated. So I think there's teetering which way this is going to go. But this is an afterthought. Let's be clear, John. Nobody set out and said we're going to tell this movie with Snoke as the villain in the first 2 movies, and then bait and switch and swap in Palpatine in the third one. Hey, you signing up for Force Awakens, JJ? That was never the plan. They're winging this. And I hope JJ's just winging it like it looks like he's doing in a really positive way, where he's able to kind of pick up the fragmented pieces of Last Jedi, a film that ended with no conflict, and generate conflict in the first 20 minutes of this movie so we have a sufficient ending.
All right, we got to get on to the next question here. Thanks for sending that in, Andrew. This is the way Kenneth K writes. This is the way Kenneth, I like that. Writes, hey, John and Christian. Of course, Christian's not here today. Interesting story. J.J. Abrams told about a certain actor who remains nameless, left a script of Episode 9 under their bed, and it was found by someone cleaning who later tried to sell it on eBay, which I've still not read the story in depth. When I saw the headlines, apparently it all came to a good conclusion and everything. But what I brought up on my show earlier today was that it's not surprising to me that things like this can happen. When you consider the amount of thousands of people that work on these things and the amount of movement, I'm surprised stuff like this doesn't happen more often. So have you had a chance to read this story in depth?
Like that same talk show, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, JJ had said, I just locked picture on the movie. He flew to New York and he was doing one of those morning shows. And that's when he talked about, Carrie Fisher having 5 or 6 scenes. He also told this story. And it's a pretty funny story. He really wants to out the actor. I think it'd be funny if he does so afterwards, because I think no harm. So it's a funny story, and it's getting a lot of attention. But I mean, you've got to be so precious about this stuff. It's why they hold back on toys. That's why we don't have a toy of the asset right now. It's because they have to keep these things secret. And we all know JJ's extremely diligent
Plays
about
it close
secrets.
to the vest.
Even the novelizations don't come out till well after the movie.
Right.
Because, that's got to go through a printing process. That's got to get edited. I think, people that are writing the third act to this film right now, the novelizations don't even have the third act.
Right.
They're just sitting on it. They know where it could go, and they're just ready to jump in front of their computers and write those endings. But they're that secretive. And I think he doesn't even know the ending. As of 2 weeks ago, I think he was still tinkering with it. And he wants to make the most satisfying movie, period. I think he knows that he's not wrapping up this 3 films. He's wrapping up 9. And however he feels about the prequel trilogy, that's a part of Star Wars.
Right.
And he's got to do justice to all of it. And that's why secrecy is paramount. It's hopefully we could go back at the end of this movie and look at all those movies in a new way. And hopefully he's added layers of appreciation to Last Jedi and the prequels and even the original trilogy. He's found new ways to activate meaning in these scenes. That's the goal. And I seems like his swagger, he feels like he's delivered. He is a showman.
Right. Well, we'll see. We'll find out soon enough.
But I think he cares enough that he's done something special.
That much is clear. He cares.
He absolutely cares.
That doesn't automatically mean he
and he
succeeds,
does not out
to.
He's not out to undermine or to hurt fans.
All right.
He is there to I think find a satisfying and legitimate ending.
All right, we need to move on here. M. Droscher writes, just beginning reading Lords of the Sith because of you, my all-time... sorry, let me rephrase. My favorite of all the new generation of novels in the Star Wars universe. Last Command, the Thrawn stuff, that's always going to be my favorite novel. But I love Lords of the Sith. It's my favorite novel that's come out since the new thing. Have you had a chance to read Lords of the Sith?
Oh, yeah.
God, I love that book.
It's...
Is he? What would you say is your favorite?
Kemp, right?
Oh, God, why did I forget? Christian and I were just talking about him, and
it's great. I love that one. I've read almost all of them, except for I didn't get to the Battlefront ones yet.
Yeah,
I'm a little behind.
I read the first Battlefront one. I wasn't so big on it.
I still haven't done Master and Apprentice, and I have the new one, the Resistance Reborn. I started that one, so
I've just downloaded it on Audible.
Look, I read it all. I've read every old EU book too.
Right. Yeah.
There isn't anything that doesn't exist that I haven't read, and that is one of the better ones, I'd say, from this new
Yeah, I like the
new
Claudia
canon.
Gray stuff too.
Yeah.
Particularly Lost Stars. I like Lost Stars a lot.
Solid,
but
yeah.
I'm really glad you're getting on board with Lords of the Sith, Em. All right, Orange Grove 5 writes, really hoping JJ ties Plagueis story to explain Palpatine's return. It's a perfect explanation as to why he came back. I mean, theoretically, yes, but there's also a sense that we never got a sense in anything else in Star Wars that Palpatine ever cracked that code. So it is something to tie into a lot of the stuff.
Interesting.
But it is
It's
interesting.
Orange Grove. Is that what who just
Orange Grove 55, yes.
So JJ just put out there. He said they asked him his favorite scene from the prequel trilogy, and he talked about that scene.
The Opera House.
Yeah, and the reason he's talking about it is because he's setting up his own movie.
Right.
There's got to be something that's pulled out of that.
That would make a lot of people.
Death.
I mean, it would do it.
I mean,
It would tie everything in.
how is he back?
It would
I
tie
think
everything in.
these are the things we're talking about, where you're going to have to go back and look at that movie. You're going to look at it in a new way. And he's basically saying that's what he's working on. He still had 10, 12 years to go figure that out. That was, that was in Sith. So he didn't have much time, but maybe it meant he did. Since his mentor died,
Right.
he had 12 years to think about that. He treats it as a myth to Anakin in that scene.
Right.
You ever heard of the tragedy of this guy? So he's been obsessed with it. That's the goal of the Sith.
Well, they hear him. We hear him talk about that to Vader as well in some of the new novels. About he's constantly still working on trying to crack that secret. So you're right. He's been obsessed.
And hopefully
with
that synergy's there between what they're doing with the writing side of things, the novelizations, comic books, and what's coming up.
All right. Let's see. Next one up comes to us from Steve Rowland, who writes, it appears that The Rise of Skywalker runtime is actually shorter than expected, about 141 minutes. This was confirmed by J.J. Abrams. Yeah, J.J. did come out and apparently the runtime now is going to be about 2 hours and 21 minutes. It's everybody often thinks more is better. That's not true. More is not always better. One of the things you and I were talking about
Good
The
is
Mandalorian.
better.
And one of the things you and I have really appreciated about Mandalorian so far is that, while yes, if you had asked me in advance would I like hour-long episodes, of course I would have said yes. But I'm loving the pace of these.
It's streamlined.
Yeah.
It's efficient, and it harkens back to the way George would tell stories.
Yeah, because the original New Hope, it was like
There's
90
not a lot
minutes
of
flat.
No, it was over 2 hours, but there's not a lot of dialogue.
What was I thinking of?
It's sparse, but and the original had like a montage way of presenting material. The way he showcases the cantina, it's a montage of shots, and it's all very lived in, and it's just the aesthetic of George. He was an editor, and it's just not a lot of BS. You know what I mean? You don't need it, and I think Mandalorian is just it's on point. It respects the audience. They're not filling it with crap to hit like BS quotas. They're not saying we have to have a 55-minute show, Filoni and company stuff it with crap. This is what the story warrants. Tell the story.
Yeah, and I think they're going to bring that to a
You're not airing it
21
traditionally.
minute.
Just tell the stories that needs to be told and put that in front of me. That's all I want. I don't want BS.
And a 2 hour and 21 minute runtime for a feature film can be look, we might see a 2 hour and 21 minute movie and we might come out saying, man, that really could have used shaving 15 or 20 minutes out of it.
Sure.
We might come out of it saying, hey, that really could have used an extra 20 minutes. But we won't know till we see it. All we can do right now is kind of trust that JJ knows what the length of his movie needs to be, and hopefully that's what we got. Alexander Dixkoff writes, hey guys, have you heard the rumor where the Emperor says execute Order 67? I have not heard any such rumor.
No, what is that? Go get some Arby's? What is that? Order 67?
I don't think that's probably going to be part, but no, Alexander, I've not heard that one myself. But listen, I wouldn't be surprised if there's something. I often wondered, though, stupid question. I often wonder, though, what were orders 1 through 65? I don't know why.
Do you know Order 66 was originally Order 666?
No.
And they're like, George, that's lame.
Yeah, that's
pretty cheeseball.
Okay, no, I'm glad they changed that. Not that George ever
And
did
also
anything
like
cheeseball.
Star Wars 1313. You know what I mean? Like,
But Order 60, that would be
Jedi
interesting.
Master, I'm a Gundai.
I'm a gun guy.
That's a character.
Yep, I remember hearing that. Ashton C. writes, Star Wars, one of the worst parts of The Last Jedi for me was the arcs of Finn, Rey, and Poe. I love them in The Force Awakens.
You mean the plot?
Yeah, I love them in The Force Awakens, but they seem to take backseats to Kylo and Luke in The Last Jedi. Looks like those three characters are going to be together a lot in The Rise of Skywalker, and I am here for it. Listen, I enjoyed The Last Jedi. I did, but the very first thing when I walked out of like you and I were both at the premiere of The Last Jedi, and I remember that when I first walked out of the theater, and you get your phones taken out of these magnetically sealed packages to make sure no phone signal can come in. So got my phone back. The very first thing I did was I got on Twitter and I said, I like the film. I like it. I like it very much. But, and this was my very first tweet. Rose and Finn's character were badly used. I wrote that
I felt bad for John Boyega.
Del Toro's Benicio del Toro's character was a total waste.
His Oliver Twist character.
and I really didn't like.
Go get the one guy in the universe that can do this, and they come back with not that guy.
Yeah, and not that guy, but he's kind of like that guy.
And they only got arrested because of a parking ticket.
He's
Come
that
on,
guy
man.
Light and the whole Canto Bite thing. I mean, that was look. I am fine being at odds with a lot of other people about still liking the film overall.
There's great stuff in the movie,
but that stuff that you're pointing out, Ashton. Listen, I got to stand in agreement with the people who say these are things about this movie that
JJ's going to bring them back together.
I certainly hope so.
He's putting out Entertainment Weekly pictures showing them together.
Yeah. Did you see the new
trailer has been about them being back together?
Clip? Have you seen the They Fly Now clip?
I don't think so.
It just came out yesterday where the stormtroopers, it's kind of got a pod race feel.
I saw that one, yeah.
I've not been a big fan of the trailer so far, but man, I got to say I did like that
I think
clip.
they're going to be on point with the micro marketing right now.
Right.
That looks great. And I think it's all about bringing the characters back together. But how could they have great storylines and plots at the end of Last Jedi? Poe shakes Rey's hand. That's like if Han Solo met Princess Leia at the end of Empire. Like, hey, I'm Han. Nice to meet you. I mean, it's very... If you stop and say, is this the best way to plot these stories? The answer is no. Have they done a good job within that? Sure. Is Rian Johnson? He's an awesome director and a great dude.
Have you seen Knives Out?
It's a great Rian Johnson film. It's just not a great Star Wars film. That's kind of my issue with it.
Have you seen Knives Out yet, by the way?
Not yet.
So
I can't wait. I love his stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I love all his movies. It's just I do have issues with it. And he's bringing up an important point is where is the chemistry?
Yeah, and I hope they get that there in this one. Alex Cardenas writes, is there a moment in Star Wars that makes you cry? I got to say, I've had 5 or 6 films in history that have actually made me tears actually start to come out of my face. I think if any of them were going to be it for me in Star Wars, I think it would have to be, it's a joy cry, was the moment when Vader turned on the Emperor. And you had that totally unnecessary overuse of body movement. So Vader turns the Emperor, and then all of a sudden he's all in frame. It's just Vader, and all of a sudden you see, he doesn't just move towards it, it's and does this big lunge. One of the worst overuses of the body movements ever. But I remember that moment. I remember the first time I saw that as a kid, and just... I think it nearly came... I don't know that actually came to tears, but if you have any one moment in Star Wars that kind of did that for you?
I mean, it means so much to me, so it's hard. There's a lot of moments that get you kind of misty. I will say I loved in the theater the first time I saw Obi-Wan and Anakin after he defeated him on the shore of Mustafar.
Right.
He was kind of shouting to him, like, you were my brother.
You were supposed to be the chosen one.
There's a lot of power and history in that, and I thought it was one of the better performances by... That seems one of the Ewan's better performances, and there's just so much anguish in Hayden and so much failure, and it says a lot about that whole trilogy, and it put a great emotional stamp on it because there were some shortcomings, in different places. I thought it ended on an emotionally strong level. That just meant a lot.
All right, Hosier Miaz writes, what if Order 65 was executed instead of 66? Like, damn it, I said the wrong thing. And they run out and grab him in Arby's order or something along those lines. Yeah, I'd be curious. Like I said before.
That's Del Taco.
I wanted to know what it was going to be. Zelda Master 702 writes, doing my weekly watch of Star Wars movies tonight. Tonight's feature is your favorite, John. Only The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi left until Rise of Skywalker. Only The Force Awakens and... Sorry, let me try this again. Do my weekly watch of a Star Wars movie. Tonight's feature is your favorite, John. Oh, so I'm guessing it's The Force Awakens, which is my favorite of the new movies, is The Force Awakens. Then you got to watch The Last Jedi and then Rise of Skywalker. It's... For me, when I talk about the Star Wars, for me, it's always at the top, far above everything else of the original trilogy. Then once you drop down several levels, to me, you got The Force Awakens, I should say. Rogue One is then next for me. Solo is next for me, and then The Last Jedi. But I do love The Force Awakens, and it's a weekly watch building up to The Rise of Skywalker, which is pretty cool. And it's so weird to think about how close it is. It still almost doesn't feel real that we're this close to episode 9. You know what I mean?
It's weeks away. I'm excited. I've got like a 50-ticket block at the
Where are you going to see it?
The Man's Chinese. We're doing that
Of
every
course
time.
you're going to go to the Man's
And
Chinese
we got,
to see it.
like, it's just, I love going with a group of people and then
Yeah.
going right afterwards, like finding like a diner or something and just discussing. I mean, I would say when we did it for Last Jedi, it was more consoling. It was a funeral, but other ones have been absolute blast. I mean, Rogue One was a big crowd pleaser, I think, with a lot of people, and I love Force Awakens. None of them were out without problems, and like I said, all of them have merit. Yeah. And I still think Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley and John Boyega, and it's great casting. I love them all. I could watch them all, so it's gonna be good, and we're gonna have a good time celebrating 9 Star Wars films. I can't believe it. They're really selling it like the end though.
Okay, let's move on here. Alan Connor, by the way, you're seeing me skipping some questions because clearly I made a mistake. I didn't get this set up. Probably some of the questions that are sent in are obviously meant for the John Campea Show tomorrow. So we're just getting to the obvious Star Wars ones. Alan Connor writes, if you finish Fallen Order, thoughts on the end? Okay, so I don't want to give any spoilers away. I have only played about 2 hours into it. I get to Dathomir, and that's about as far as I've gotten into it at this point. But I did cheat and watch the 3.5 hour cutscene movie of it.
Oh.
And so I did see the ending. And I'm not going to spoil anything. All I'm going to say is I'm very impressed. I was very, very impressed with the ending. I mean, it's a little bit of a cheap pop, like a band getting on stage in Chicago and saying, "Hello, Chicago." I mean, but honestly, it still worked for me. For those of you who know the ending, you know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to guess you haven't gotten to the end of that game yet.
No, I'm early on. My son, my 6-year-old, I introduced him to Xbox at the tail end of summer break, which is probably a bad thing. He's been playing nonstop Lego Indiana Jones, Lego Star Wars, Lego Harry Potter. It's hard to get him off of it sometimes when I want to play. We just got it. And he played a little bit, and he played one morning when he shouldn't have. And he said he got to a monster that scared him. And he threw the controller and he ran out of the room. I don't know what part he's talking about. We were still on that junk planet where he's...
Right, okay.
We're very early on.
Right,
I'm very early on, and he keeps taking my controller.
There's still some there's some good stuff coming.
I'll get there by next Christmas.
Jake Harden writes, Baby Yoda being used to clone / bring back the Emperor. Listen, one of the things that film fans do all the time, I'm guilty of this sometimes too, is looking for connective tissue between everything. Everything is one big story. Everything's one big shared cinematic universe. I really don't believe there's going to be anything associated between Mandalorian, other than the fact that they're all in the same world. I don't think we're going to see
How do you reconcile the Force user, though? Having a Force user this young, this powerful, and then entering a point in time where the Force needs to be awakened.
First of all...
Does that mean the baby
This is a 50-year-old.
dies?
There's a 50-year-old.
And the reason he's 50 is weird to me.
Yeah. Well,
it's dating back to a very specific point in the Star Wars timeline.
Right.
It's not arbitrary.
Right. The explanation is the species, well, at least this isn't official. This is just what IG-11 said. That different species age at different points in time. But there's also so much we just don't know about this. We don't even have an official name for the species.
In 2 weeks, we'll know everything.
Yes, I agree.
And Yoda was very old at 900. Obviously, being a master of the Force had extended his life. We don't know how old Yaddle was. We know there's something special.
Or is that the natural lifespan of
We know there's something
species?
special about this species. It seems
Right.
like there's something special. There's only 3 instances of them on screen or in text. There was that old Topps card of these little Yodas praying to a big Yoda. That was
I don't remember
recalled.
that one.
If you Google the Yoda card, there's like a Yoda statue and it got recalled. I have it. I think George got very angry that Topps kind of hired an artist and was presumpsuous about the Yoda culture.
Yeah, that seems pretty
Yes, they
out
pulled
of
it.
bounds.
It was polybagged in these old Star Wars Galaxy magazine, I think. So that was always off limits. So it's interesting that they're going down this route. I wouldn't be surprised if George is involved in this show. They're going to reveal. That's why they're going here.
All right, Ryan Lohner writes, have you seen the stuff about Werner Herzog shaming Favreau into using a puppet and not CGI Baby Yoda? Sounds about right. I don't know how you Listen, when you're talking about Werner Herzog, you're talking literally about a guy who threatened to kill one of his cast members on set of a movie once. Werner Herzog once actually said, I've got a gun in my trailer. I have 2 bullets. I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to kill myself. And the actor, guess what? Suddenly did what Werner Herzog wanted him to do. So I don't know. That's got to be an intimidating...
He's a convincing guy.
He's a convincing guy. By the way, I was excited when I heard he was going to be part of Mandalorian. I could listen to him just sit down in that chair and speak dialogue for an entire...
I love it when he says, Grief Karga.
He's just got such a great voice.
Mandalorian. Every word that comes out of his mouth, how he accentuates it.
With conviction. Every word is conviction. Yeah. What's the first thing he says to Mando when he says, what are you going to do with it? Not uncharacteristic. Is it uncharacteristic?
I think,
is that the first
yeah.
thing? How uncharacteristic.
He's great.
And just, boom. I could listen to that dude all
I like
night.
that they brought in people you wouldn't expect. When I saw that casting, I was like, Carl Weathers?
Yeah, that was weird.
Werner Herzog? This is cool.
Gina Carano. That's the bigger question mark to me, because I like Gina Carano very much, and I liked her in Deadpool. Not the strongest actress. So, but we'll see how he uses her. We'll see how they use her.
I'm excited.
All right,
it's been great so
next
far.
one up. Brandon Blake writes, how are you keeping track of what comments go with which show? I'm just doing my best. Also, Mando totally shot Apollo there because the Beskar was in his pocket. I don't know if he did, like, if you see one guy like 6 hours earlier has something in his pocket, do you just assume it's still there? I'm not buying into the theory that he shot him there on purpose.
Didn't he kind of shoot him while there was mist in the air?
There was a lot of mist and smoke in the air, yeah. So I'm not buying
a good shot. I don't know.
It's possible.
We'll see. Maybe, if he modifies it by saying, I spared you.
Yeah, if a line of...
Otherwise,
if I
I'm
you
accepting
dead,
it as a fortune favored.
Yes, I agree.
In that situation. I don't think he was trying to teach him a lesson.
Again, I think the line, if I wanted you dead, you'd be dead, that line will pop up if that's the case, but I don't. I think it was
disintegrations are the best.
Yeah, oh, God, they look so good.
Jawa popping those little guys.
That looks so great.
So good.
All right, Smit writes, do you think the success of The Mandalorian will take away any thunder from Rise of Skywalker? It's a good question. I actually think quite the opposite. I think, if anything, if The Mandalorian had come out and was sub-quality and the people weren't like it, I think that would work against everything else Star Wars that was coming up. I think the fact that it's out right now, it's gotten people enthused about Star Wars. I don't think it's going to take away from it. I think it's going to feed it. And look, it's no coincidence that the season is ending just as the movie's coming out.
It's great synergy, great timing. I like the way he spelled Mandalorian. It makes me think of a nice mashup between Star Wars and
Back to the Future.
The
Mandalorian.
Look, Star Wars was in an interesting spot. No matter how you feel about The Last Jedi, the community is divided.
Right.
And they needed something to unify it. And I think defaulting to two guys who would give their life for Star Wars, and Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, two intrinsically pure fans that I think get it, but also are trying to move the brand forward, was an extremely calculated and honest move. I think they're like, we got to have our best foot forward. Let's put faith in these guys. And it looks like they let them do what they wanted to do. And now they've got this platform, which is kind of creating a positive buzz again in the Star Wars community. It's bringing people back and bringing back together so they can go launch this movie properly and give this, the Roman numeral, series the send off. And I think it's going to yield more faith in some of this stuff. And, obviously when they built the schedule, they didn't know the quality of Mandalorian.
Right.
They're like, we're hoping it's going to be good. The script seemed good. The team seemed good. This is our plan. And they were going to stick with this plan even if the Mandalorian was terrible. So it's not like they saw a cut finally in September with all locked picture and like, this is our release. This is what they were going to do regardless. It's just they put faith in some of the right people, and there's a reason they brought back JJ. He made them $2 billion, and these are his characters that he kind of created. And so they're trying to create a little moment here of positivity.
And I think it's working so far.
Yeah.
Mike Dameron writes, do you think it's an odd time for news about the future of Star Wars to be coming out? Stories of Favreau leadership mixed with stories of stolen scripts, no movie announcements, and directors quitting all before Episode 9. Could it be a bad sign for Episode 9? No, I think a lot of this stuff has to do with created stories that people make up. There's a lot of that out there. Even a lot of the positive stuff, I think, is stuff that you have to take with a huge grain of salt. Remember, this isn't Lucasfilm sitting down and putting out press releases. This is people making up stories and things like that.
Yeah.
And you know what? I usually find in eras of positivity. These are good times to talk about the future. And you were just pointing out right now we've got something in Mandalorian that have people excited, that have people happy. If you're going to speculate about the future, now is the time to do it. But you got to remember, 90% of the stuff that you read is all bullshit. I mean, just straight up. So I really wouldn't worry about it.
Mostly bullshit, but there is
there's
truth.
always grains of it. There's always grains of it. But like I said, 90%. But yeah, there's some truth. But a lot of
the
it,
details are probably all wrong. But sometimes
Right.
there's truth at the core.
Sometimes there is. Let's see. Commander Dameron Squadron writes, Christian is Vader's lung made of, cast iron? Get it? I get it. He knows it. Shiloh Shooter writes, one of two, Rebels, Vader, and Palpatine talk about Tano. Two of two, and led Obi pals. You know what, Shiloh? Sorry, dude. I have no idea what you're talking about, so you got to be a little bit better with...
No V in Obi series. No Vader in Obi series.
Is that...
Well, yeah.
Vader and no
Vader's... I don't think he's going to be... I don't think they're going... Look, obviously they can't cross paths. Vader and Obi-Wan.
Well, see, here's the thing. There is a theory. I am in complete agreement with you. 100%. However, there is an active theory going around that there are ways around the language to set it up that when Vader says, for instance, to Obi-Wan in A New Hope, that last I saw you, I was but the learner, now I am the master, that he wasn't talking about the confrontation they had on Mustafar. He's talking about another confrontation that comes after that. And I'm like, to me...
Would Vader at that point consider himself the learner?
That's exactly the refute to that a lot of people bring up. That makes no sense.
That things like that devalue the original trilogy and George's intention.
And see, that's the thing. To me, there's a sense of... Semantically, can you work around it? Yes.
Of course.
But it is a clear violation of the implied intent of what the movie's message was.
Like they team up and Obi wants to teach him one last lesson. No. Screw that. Like, tell new stories. They don't have to involve these characters. Star Wars is a giant universe. Tell new stories without crapping on the previous characters. You can go do bold new things. Period.
I agree. All right. Trent writes... Great show. Thank you so much, Trent. I'm excited about Palpatine, but also worried about how he will be handled. It does make sense to bring him back as he is the main villain of the saga. And I think Kyle put that perfectly about the whole thing about there's a poetic rightness about it, but also the fact that it does kind of tie all 9 films together that, if not handled right, can make them look very segmented. And by bringing him back, it just gives a sense of an overall story from episode 1 right through to the end of episode 9. So, but still, even if it's a good idea, I can still understand why some people seeing the return of Palpatine, while I think is great, could look at him and feel a little bit nervous. Though,
sure.
Kyle, right? I mean,
but their choices are the Yuuzhan Vong or Palpatine. I mean, they really didn't get left with much.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think bringing a new villain for the final film
create a new villain and have to take all that screen time to make up somebody that's scarier than Palpatine and Snoke, and then explain where this guy's been. Already, they didn't kind of give enough indication as the purpose of Snoke or how he was so aged and wise and experienced and gifted what he was doing for 1,000 years. I don't need a backstory. I just need to know that he had a vision. Like, the true power comes from wielding the light and the dark together. That's my purpose for you, Kylo and Rey. That's what I wanted. If they were to go do another guy, like, they have to have a reason for this person to not be a player for all those years.
Right.
It's not about that he's badass, but why was he not a character for the last 50 years? That's the harder challenge. That's why they just have to go back to what's familiar. And that was forced upon them. And
I think it's going to work. Let's see. Charles Chemtob writes, this is the way, and I have spoken McClunky. 3 huge phrases.
That's the term of the year.
3, that got
McClunky
old fast.
For president.
I was over McClunky about 24 hours after it first came out.
And I bet in March, we've forgotten about it for a long time, someone's going to drop a McClunky and you're going to laugh.
Probably. And it does feel like we are now 2 episodes in to Mandalorian, and we've got I Have Spoken, which I need a shirt of that character with the words I have spoken. I have to have. Why am I freezing on the guy who did the voice.
This Is the Way. That's another good one.
Yeah, but who did the voice of I Have Spoken, Dude? Why am I freezing?
Nick Nolte.
I need a picture of Nick Nolte say, and then This Is the Way, because that man, if that didn't give you goosebumps when he says.
I would like to see a Gary Busey Ugnaught too. Maybe there's two. They team up in season 2.
That would work. I'm wondering what's the next catchphrase in the next episode of Mandalorian going to be, because they seem to be giving out a bunch. Shiloh writes, would break canon please share with Christian? Believe me, I have argued with Christian over that, but we will have a larger depth argument on this on the show. Jonathan Thompson writes, are you worried about the leaked rumor that people are walking out of early screenings and finding the... Okay, look.
Who's doing that? What early screening?
For fuck's sakes. All right? Can we please put this complete bullshit to rest? Listen, do you remember back... Let me give you a little bit of insight into test screenings and how they work, what they are, and what they are not, okay? Number one, the true test screenings that I've only had a chance to be a part of one, and that was as an invited guest, as an observer, okay? That was it. I wasn't even part of the thing because they have controlled test groups. I can't be a part of that. Number one, everybody there I saw come in signed NDAs. That was number one. Number two, it is a specially arranged thing. You don't get up and walk out of these. This isn't a Saturday night, I'm going to go to this thing. And then if you decided you want to leave, you just get up and leave. That doesn't happen in these things.
Who's walking out of Star Wars?
And nobody, no matter how bad it is, nobody's walking out of Star Wars. Now, I want to remind you of a couple of quick things. Do you remember back in the day, whenever you hear, let me tell you this right now, whenever you hear that, did you hear about this test screening that X? It's bullshit. Whatever they say, it's a complete lie, because that does not come out. The only time you can believe it is when, like, the Russo brothers themselves come out and say, listen, we have test screened Endgame and we're getting some of the best responses we've ever had. When you're hearing it from the official studio source, believe it. But do you remember that bullshit that came out when they were test screening, I think it was Justice League, and the rumor and the reports go around, did you hear there were standing ovations at the test screening of Justice League? Bullshit! Because that doesn't come out. Then they start saying, remember, did you hear about the Wonder Woman? Remember this, the Wonder Woman test screenings? Apparently everybody was angry at the movie and everybody hated it. Bullshit, people loved the movie. There was no truth to that whatsoever. You can't get up and walk out of a test screening. People sign NDAs out the ass. I don't care. If you hear somebody say tomorrow there's a test screening of The Rise of Skywalker and they're saying it's the greatest Star Wars movie of all time, smack them in the face, kick them in the ass, and push them out your door, because they're lying to you. I don't care if it's positive. I don't care if it's negative. It is all bullshit.
Star Wars doesn't test screen. He's worried about the script getting out, and he's going to test screen it to a bunch of random dudes at, like, the Sherman Oaks Galleria. No, he's not doing that. He is doing screenings with friends, yes. trusted peers.
And did you hear, by the way, on top of this rumor, attached to this rumor, did you hear that attached to this same, by the way, if you want to know that it's bullshit, take this. Attached to this same rumor was the fact that Disney was so concerned about it that they also decided to make 3 versions of the movie. One was JJ's, one was, I can't remember who the other person was, and the third was George Lucas. They had George Lucas come in to do a cut of the film.
They don't want George Lucas around. They don't respect George Lucas, guys.
It did not happen. So listen, that's not to say that The Rise of Skywalker won't be the worst movie of all time. It very well could be. It might be. But it ain't going to have anything to do with these rumors. It could be I don't care if the greatest... Oh, did you hear that there was a test screening and everybody sang Kumbaya and pulled their dicks out and yanked it in unison and they all loved it so much? It's a lie.
And it doesn't matter. Judge for yourself.
Yeah.
Show up.
Judge for yourself.
Watch the movie. Do you like it? Yes or no? Like, I respect the people that like the Star Wars they like, and the people that don't like stuff that I like. It's fine. It's all, just like what you like. It's all fine. No one's a better fan. No one's a worse fan. And if people left the theater and didn't like it, you might show up and love it.
Yeah.
But it's only friends of JJ's that are seeing this movie. None of them are walking out on their friend JJ Abrams with their arms up like Brian De Palma talking about how crap the movie is. You know what I mean? None of them. It's a constructive environment, and it's probably a very small, curated environment. And I bet JJ did test multiple endings.
And look, again, let me reemphasize. This does not me saying that all that rumor is complete bullshit.
It's all speculation.
Doesn't mean it's not going to be bad. It could be bad, but we'll see. We'll find out. All right. Sorry, I'm not taking it out on you, Jonathan, because I know that's what you heard. So you're just asking the question. So I get that. Okay, let's move on here. Next one up comes to us from, that was Jonathan. Sorry about that. Next one is Luke Ward, who writes, John, Your opinion of the prequels has mostly stayed consistent, but, well, I mean, not completely consistent. I'll get to that in a second. But what do you think of the change in perception over their quality over the years? Kyle, have your opinions changed at all on them? Now, this is one of the instances, this is one of the reasons I love talking to Kyle, because Kyle and I actually have a number of very vastly different opinions
which
on
is
the world of
healthy.
Star Wars, which makes it fun. Listen, when it comes to the prequels, they were a situation for me that when I for instance, take The Phantom Menace. When I saw The Phantom Menace for the first time, I loved it. Then I saw it again. I saw it about, I can't remember how many times I saw it. And every time I watched it, I liked it less and less and less, to the point where I went, you know what, I hate this movie. And then the same thing happened with the other prequels. Now, I was very lucky that once I saw The Force Awakens, and every time I watched it, I ended up liking it more and more and more. So that's great. And it doesn't happen to me often, but that was the thing with me with Star Wars. So my opinion on Star Wars did change from when I first saw it very shortly afterwards, but it's stayed the same ever since. Although I will say this too. My opinion on Revenge of the Sith has nudged a little bit.
Positive or negative?
Has nudged a little bit more for the positively. I refer to it as, I believe it is the least offensive of the prequels. But honestly though, I remember when I did my screening, we did me and Christian and John Schnepp, we used to do these watch along commentaries. We'd watch the movie and film ourselves watching and give commentary. And I remember at that time watching it, I went, you know what? I'm not having the spastic anal allergic reaction to this as I did, say, watching Clones, right? And I saw more upside in it than I did previously. So I will say that my opinion of Revenge of the Sith has nudged a little bit over the years, more towards the positive on that. So I give it that. But I know you've been very steadfast in being.
I've done
you're a fan of
prequel
these
appreciation panels.
You have done that,
multiple
as a matter
times
of
at Star Wars
fact, yes.
Celebration with a really good consortium of people. We look at it in across the board, like holistic way on all different levels. And I understand why people have the gripes with it. I love The Phantom Menace probably the most of all the prequel trilogy movies. I also immersed myself in the narrative of it before the movies came out. I read the books and stuff.
Right.
And, you know, I accepted the story as opposed to how the movie was made. Now, my issues with like prequel trilogy, the ones I do have, are smaller. Tweaks, gripes, cut this. Why is this line in here? Who writes dialogue with the same word twice in the same sentence? You know, no need to report that until there's something to report. Terrible dialogue. Report out of there somewhere, please. I have, like, what my issue with, say, like Last Jedi, there are just fundamental storytelling issues with it, you know, intrinsic. Whereas the DNA of the first movie, you know, he's all about the past. You know, it's this experiential thing that he deserves. He's cosplaying as his grandfather, you know? It's like this religious experience he deserves. And the next movie's like, kill the past, it's stupid. You're like, well, you just woke up and you have a new mantra today, dude? It works as a whole, but it doesn't jive together. Whereas the prequels, it's little gripey things throughout. If someone said, here, go fix these movies, probably in a weekend of editing, I could tweak those movies and just carve out little things that you don't need and really shape it better. Not like Topher Grace's extreme cut. It's tricky. I happen to love the prequel zone. I would say Attack of the Clones is one of my least favorite Star Wars films overall, and it's down there with Last Jedi and Target Star Wars commercials.
Target Star Wars commercials.
It's low. It's low. I still love them. You know what I mean? I still find joy in them, and I hope that the experience of future Star Wars enriches it, and I keep myself open and hopeful. I'm not going to write them off completely and say, I'm never going to watch that movie. I'll watch it with my children. I'll watch it with friends. I'll put on Last Jedi and watch. I'll put on Attack of the Clones. I watched it recently. I find things in every time that I can enjoy. I love all Star Wars. But if I'm ranking them or looking at them that way, I have the most gripes, I would say, with those two films. I would say even Revenge of the Sith is probably depreciated in value for me just a little. I actually think The Phantom Menace has aged the best of all of them in terms of effects, because it's just so heavy on model work. And I know people are like, whoa, what'd you just say? But there is more model work in The Phantom Menace than any other film combined times two.
Right.
The adherence to classic model making, it just happened to be augmented and brought in digitally. The craft in that movie is insane.
All right. We still got a bunch of questions we got to get through here. Extant Crab. What is your favorite Yoda quote? Oddly enough, though certainly not my favorite movie with Yoda in it. It might be a couple of his lines from Last Jedi. I really, in an isolated environment, I really love the conversation that took place between Yoda and Luke in that. So as far as single shot lines, his commentary on failure, page turners, they are not. I don't know why. I love that line when he's talking about the ancient texts. So a couple of the lines. Do you have a particular favorite, not necessarily favorite Yoda moment, but a favorite Yoda line?
Luminous beings, his speech.
Oh, that's nice.
I mean, that's the
luminous beings
most, I think, encapsulated, powerful, spiritual description of the Force. I think it's the one that gave Star Wars its universal spiritual identity, the way it invited people of all races and creeds into it by this inoffensive yet powerful and uplifting kind of way of looking at the world and how we're all the same. I think in hindsight too, looking 100 years, people go, what is this myth of Star Wars? That's one of those lines that'll probably transcend beyond the movie, if movies aren't even a thing. It's a beautiful, positive way of looking at life and how we view gods and, the more, what's beyond us. And it's coming from this little green puppet, I think it's pretty profound. So I think that's probably the best piece of Yoda dialogue. There's other moments I like. I mean, I don't love Yoda fighting with a lightsaber. That's not my favorite,
I'm not gonna lie, I do enjoy that stuff. Even in the movies I don't like.
It's fun, but it's not my favorite Yoda.
Right.
I prefer Yoda when he's playing with words or pontificating, as opposed to trying to go sword to sword with somebody.
Right. All right. Let's move on here. Tony Macari writes, I love Kyle Newman. Please make him a regular on the show. Well, Kyle is a little bit of a busy dude.
Tom Macari, I love you too.
Oh, do you know Tom?
I don't talk. No, I don't talk about Star Wars much anymore. It's been a painful 600-700 days. I'm gonna wake up after December 19th as a new Star Wars fan. It's gonna be my baptism, rebaptism.
All right. Josh Marion writes, just finished Fallen Order Sunday, and wow, so much material incorporated into this game. Well, you know what, Josh? Well, it was on the. Without context, it'd be okay. I apologize, guys. When you write in questions, please be very, very careful. There's nothing too major here, so no harm, no foul. But guys, please be very careful when you're writing in questions about whether you're including things that might be considered spoilers to other people. There's nothing terrible. It's already been up here on the screen. But guys, please, I know no harm was intended, but please be cautious.
What's your stance on spoilers regarding the asset on Mandalorian and people in the UK that don't get it to March?
Well, here's the thing. One of my definitions of spoilers has always been there are three things that preclude anything from being considered a spoiler. Number one, if it is public knowledge.
It's public knowledge.
But my number two step is if the studio itself makes it a part of their marketing. Disney has publicly released images of...
Oh, they have now.
Yeah, okay. They put it on their social media of Baby Yoda. I mean, it's out there.
Redirect your anger towards Disney, who for whatever reason is not releasing it into a major market until the spring, and not at fans who want to go into a social format and talk about the movie socially. I understand gloating with people about it or putting up pictures maybe once Disney has fine, but also I look at TV shows as sporting events.
Yeah,
it happens.
I mean, once it's
give
out
people
there,
a grace period of opening weekend for Rise of Skywalker. People are going to talk about it. If it really means that much to you, find a way to do it, or be prepared to get spoiled. It's hard to be like, don't talk about it till I get this in March. Yeah.
And I get, look, from Disney's point of view, I understand.
Why are they waiting?
There are some markets that it's just going to take longer to get your broadcasting rights and your streaming rights because certain other players have other rights. And it's going to take longer to get into some markets than others. And they had a decision to make. Do we wait an extra year and then launch when we can launch in most markets at the same time?
Couldn't they put it out in another format for them?
There are some where they have... The
pirating is going to be insane.
In India, they already own an existing service there called Hotstar.
Okay.
So they have another branch that they could put that out with there. But then there are some markets that they don't. And they made the decision that instead of waiting another 8 months or another year or another whatever.
That's brutal. That's like 1977 challenges of releasing when you're not getting it.
It's true when you're dealing with international market rights.
2019.
And here's the other catch too. Then there's individual property rights because in Australia,
because when you can screen who has the rights of what movie to release on what platform, because you work at international deals when you make a movie, who has distribution rights in what territory and for how long. So they have to wait till they all are harmonious back together.
But we'll get there.
Yeah.
They will get there. But it does suck for them. But anyway, to finish reading Josh's question, finish Fallen Order on Sunday. So much material incorporated into this game, from the Night Sisters of Dathomir to the Jedi Temple on Elam. My favorite surprise was the reveal of your former master being a Lasat. So again, I'm not going to go into any details onto this because I don't want to get into a lot of stuff. Other than to say...
That was a spoiler.
Well, again, I know because I've played... because I've watched it all the way through, I know what level of a spoiler it is, and it's not earth-shaking. But they say that they do a lot of very, very creative things in this game.
Matt Michnovitz, he's one of the main writers of that game. And Matt also is a veteran of Clone Wars and Rebels.
Which is not surprising because the Cal character, the main character who you play in this game, is really just another version of Caleb, or Freddy's character.
Kanan.
What's that? Kanan. He's really just another version of Kanan in many ways. So it's not that original of a character, but it's very enjoyable. For those of you who still haven't been sure whether to get on board with this Fallen Order thing, take Josh Marion's advice. Get on that. It's actually a lot of fun. And if you don't play video games, just jump on YouTube and search for the cutscene movie and sit down, get a bowl of popcorn and a couple of drinks and enjoy it, because it's just, even as a story, it's just a really good story. Clear writes, a lot of talk about book/movie canon using the Force Awakens novel with Poe and Rey as the example. Any other books breaking canon? A novelization is kind of different. Here's the problem. So you haven't heard me talk about this, Kyle, but I am very much a canon stickler. And I said when Disney first took it over and they said a new era is starting where everything from books to games to everything, it's all canon.
Yes,
and I said that's very noble because it does away with the old era mess of there's G-level canon, there's B-level canon, there's this there was only one canon, it was G canon. But so it does away with all that. But I said it's noble and I love that they're doing it, but it ain't gonna be able to do it, and it's not gonna be able to last, even though I applaud the effort. And what Clear is referring to is that in the novelizations of Star Wars The Force Awakens, Poe and Rey meet.
They do.
On the screen, of course, they don't meet until The Last Jedi. So what is canon? So they went to Pablo Hidalgo, who put out a statement, and I like Pablo Hidalgo very much.
I love Pablo.
But
Big
he put out a
RPG fan. He's
he
master
is.
of the West End game. Yeah.
I've never met Pablo, but I think a mutual friend of ours actually is the guy who hired Pablo initially over at Lucasfilm.
Oh, wow.
It's with Paul.
Okay, cool.
But anyway, so he put out a statement that said this, because a lot of people ask the question, well, hey, you said the books are canon, but this happened here and this happened here. And he put out this statement, which was, I didn't think a great statement. He said this. Okay, so the stuff in books is canon unless they contradict or in conflict with what happens in the movie. To me, that is saying that girl is sort of pregnant. You either are pregnant or you're not.
There was another book, too. The book about Princess Leia. Was it Bloodlines?
Bloodline?
Bloodline had, obviously, the way it was dating how old Kylo was when he found out about his... Vader being
his grandfather.
Yeah, it puts it really late. He was in his 20s. Puts it only a few years before Force Awakens. There's just timeline didn't gel in the right way, at least based on how they're proceeding with things. Also, at the end of Force Awakens, it says, General Solo, hugs Rey the way only a mother could.
Yeah.
There's lines about how, obviously, much more conjecture about the girl between Snoke and Kylo. Perhaps he was right about the identity of the girl. Obviously, the girl was somebody more than a nobody.
Right.
Based on how Alan Dean Foster was writing the book. And you can see a lot of this stuff was then abandoned or stripped away because J.J. was re-editing that movie up till the very, very end and tinkering with who's who and lineages. So I think... It's hard. You're right. It's a noble but probably thankless.
Have you read
task.
the new Thrawn novels? The new Thrawn novels?
I've attempted.
Okay, so
Not the biggest. Look, my favorite Star Wars is the Heir to the Empire trilogy.
Absolutely.
That stuff changed me.
yeah, me too.
And every time I read a book, I'm like, it's not as good as that.
See, I
It's
like
hard.
the first one.
I listened to the audiobook, and Thrawn has a best friend in it. And in the audiobook, he sounds like George W. Bush. He's like, should we all go do that, Thrawn? What do you think? Thrawn, pull my finger.
What was
it's
his
like,
name?
what?
Lieutenant.
I'm
trying to remember his actual name.
Probably ruined it because I listened to the audiobook.
Right.
And
Well, I'm
he's
not
supposed
really
to be this
sure,
hillbilly kind of guy that he meets, but the interpretation of it in the audiobook was rough.
I like the first book. Not a big fan of the second one, and I just heard the last one, which is called Treason, which
Yeah, I'll check it out.
which I liked. I
read the Aftermath books, and I did not.
Yeah, I wasn't a big
suffered
fan of
through them.
Aftermath either. But here's the big thing when it comes to canon. So these Thrawn stories, plot points, okay. They take this, particularly Treason takes place in between a couple of events in Rebels, because he refers to an event going on in the Rebels series.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the book, it's like, okay, I now need to go back to this situation I have going on with these uprising rebels. But in the Thrawn books, let's start with Rebels. In Rebels, Thrawn is conniving. He may have a code, but he is clearly vicious, and he's clearly evil. In the Thrawn books, he is a good guy. And I'm not just talking about, from the villain's own perspective, the villain always sees himself. No, I mean, he is a good guy. He has compassion. He's kind.
Yeah.
He's brilliant, but he's very calm. And it's I'm sorry, but the Thrawn character in the books, who I like the character very much in the books, but he is a totally different character than the character they portray him as in Rebels. It's another sort of example of, well, what is Thrawn like? Is he the portrayal in this, or is he the portrayal in this? Because they're two totally different characters, which again I think speaks to the fact that they're not all connected. They're not all canon.
It's so hard to maintain all this, but not just maintain, but you have to rein everybody in creatively.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why they had to strip away all those books and say, you're untethered from all this. The legacy is not
Right.
an anchor. Go create the best story, and we'll filter in what works. So I see the philosophy behind what Pablo is saying, because they've done that effectively with Clone Wars and Rebels. They would graduate things into the television or cinematic universe of Star Wars. It is quite the challenge, and you're asking every author to then become a master of everything that's come before.
Well, that's where the story group needs to step in and kind of
hard,
work
but it's
with
not
them.
a huge group. There's 9 or 10
Yeah.
people on story group. They also have their fingers in theme parks and other things, and they're doing role-playing games. They have an eye on everything. So it's hard to totally ride a creator into these little boxes or corners and say you have to do it just like this. I think they have to let people interpret in these different mediums, and there's going to be those discrepancies between interpretation, between how he is in the animated show versus how he is in this book by Timothy Zahn, who created him.
Yeah.
So it's like, who's right, the guy who created him or the person who interpreted him on an animation show that needed him to be more antagonistic?
Right.
So it's hard.
It's a tough one. Even
What I
with
do
the best
love,
of
I
intentions.
love reading it all, and I
Right.
love saying, I really love this. I have problems with this because of this. Like, you can have healthy conversations about it rather than, criticizing the creator or the person who put their life's work into this. A lot of people are spending time and energy on this. Respect it, but you can still say, I don't like this part. It doesn't work for me. That's totally fine.
Right.
You just don't have to have a hostile approach to the material or the person to make it personal. Star Wars is gigantic. You're not going to love everything, period.
All right. Richard Lugo writes, do you think that the series will connect directly, which series will connect directly to the films or different stories from different time periods? Are we talking about
Probably
the
Mandalorian.
Mandalorian series? I mean, look, they already do. They reference the Empire all the time. I mean, there's always ways to
like
connect
they
it
rip
in.
open that thing and there's a battle droid, a super battle droid standing there, and I'm sure the next episode is going to have another flashback and it's going to be another character. Maybe that character's tied to something else.
Well, we're going to find out who saves young Mando from that super battle droid.
Right.
It's either going to be another Mandalorian, because clearly he's not born Mandalorian. This
No.
guy's not born a Mandalorian. So it's either another Mandalorian, it's Yoda himself, which explains why when he sees the asset, it kind of freezes him. So that's a possibility. Maybe it's Qui-Gon Jinn. I mean, I don't know how early.
Ahsoka, because it's Filoni.
Oh my God! Please don't. I swear to God, Dave Filoni goes to bed each night touching himself to thinking about Ahsoka Tano.
No, Dave is the best. Dave's the best dude on earth.
I've met and talked to Dave. Is wonderful, but
yes.
he's got a total hard on for that character that he created, and I'm not a big fan of that particular.
I understand.
I'm not a big fan of that particular.
I respect it. I like her.
What do you think it's going to be that rescues young Mando hiding in that thing as the super battle droid opens the doors? Is it a Republic soldier? Is it a Mandalorian? Is it a Jedi general? Is it, a Jedi in general? Is it a specific Jedi? Is it a Yoda that maybe that's why he's got these flashbacks? Who do you think it is, or what do you think it is?
It's probably going to be a familiar character.
Think so?
But I don't know from what side or what faction. I don't think Yoda. I mean, maybe you just threw that out there. I'm like, really? What would that be like? I would say familiar, but I just don't know enough about where's that planet. Where are we?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Where is he from? Where's Mando from? Yeah,
and obviously we've seen other people wear Mandalorian armor,
right,
and not be Mandalorian. So what constitutes Mandalorian? Is it just your adherence to the code?
Because remember, she does say.
She said, "Have you ever taken your mask off?"
But she also says, you've chosen this way of, nobody chooses this way of life is a coward. So
yes. And have you ever
taken off the helmet? Has anyone taken it off you?
Right. So that's after he was a kid.
Yes.
Well, I'm assuming because we've seen kids running around with helmets that they're just kind of like, they put them in the nursery and they slap a little mini helmet on and you graduate to bigger helmets. What? Which
another stuff. We've seen Mandalorians. Well, look, we saw Rebels. Mandalorians always have their helmets off.
They do.
So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see
what all this means.
Really
shitty tans. I don't understand, though. Okay, it's Dave, so they're going to obviously reconcile these different, the Night Watch versus Mandalorian versus the peaceful Mandalore culture versus, obviously these Mandalorians and what happened to this subsect of them. There's a lot of divergent ideas on Mandalorian out there right now, probably more than there should be, based on all the different mediums. And I hope this kind of unifies them.
All right. Midai Major writes, greetings from Paris, France. Well, thank you, Midai. Greetings to you as well. Bonjour, mon ami. Do you think they used The Last Jedi footage for Leia? I remember someone saying that they did, but JJ only refers to The Force Awakens when asked. They have been very specific. Now, they've been specific about other things. That doesn't mean they stuck to it. But JJ, they did say that they were specifically going to draw on her unused footage, specifically from The Force Awakens, not from Last Jedi. To be honest, I have no idea if there's unused footage of her from Last Jedi or not. You have to assume that there should be some.
I mean, movies have like, what, a 20-to-1 ratio of footage? Granted, most of it's probably the same take or variations of the same dialogue. I don't know if there's any indication that there's fully deleted scenes of her from Last Jedi. But I think JJ's the one conceiving of the story, and he had an idea for it based on what he knew he couldn't work into the Force Awakens.
Right.
And I think that was that Hammerhead. Wasn't there a slingshot or something?
Something along
some weird ship. It's something to do with, I think, third act combat. Minimal. So it's JJ's crafted this idea, like a bolt of lightning. So it's probably going to come from JJ's material.
All right, Haskell420 writes, I am loving The Mandalorian, but I think fans are going to be pissed off seeing another desert planet as he's going to the ocean dunes of whatever. No, don't forget, he's not going there. He was only going to go to the ocean dunes of whatever if he was taking the bounty to go after that Mon Cal character, the Mon Calamari character.
And that wouldn't be familiar.
But that's done now. He's no longer part of the
ocean dunes aren't a desert planet. That's a Mon Cal. Right.
So there's they call it the ocean. He's hiding out.
Underwater dunes?
Well, I mean, right. He's hiding out. This guy's on the run, so he's hiding out somewhere. So maybe they figured he's hiding out at somewhere where you never think to find him.
Maybe. Yeah. Look, there are too many planets that are desert planets between Jeddah and the new one coming up in Rise of Skywalker,
and a couple of
Jakku and Tatooine, and now this other frontier place. Let's find new ways to stimulate this universe visually.
So, but don't forget, he's no longer part of the Bounty Hunter Guild, so he's not going after the next bounty, I do not believe. Because he can't come back to them for payment. Gareth Tucson writes, would Kylo Ren have killed Leia if she was in Han Solo's place? Would Kylo? Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Would Kylo Ren have killed Leia if she was standing on that needlessly handleless crosswalk?
Yeah, if she said, "Let me go get our son," rather than saying, "You deadbeat dad who ran away from your family and being a hero off screen."
That's a good question. I don't think he would have at that moment. I mean, later, look, in the Last Jedi, he knew Leia was in that bunker on Crate. He knew she was in there, and he ordered the destruction of it. So at that point, but at that point...
And the only reason he has trepidation with pulling the trigger is because he is haunted by the mistake of killing his father. In that moment, when the sun is eclipsed and darkness washes over him, and he knows what he has to do, he's committed to the cause in a fanatical way. Yes, he probably, for narrative reasons, would have run the sword through his mom. Because guess what? No matter who you put there was going to be someone who meant something to him who he had to kill. That's the narrative arc. That's the mythology of it. Regardless of his relationship to Leia, they would have crafted the story to make it so he was okay killing Leia there. So if they substituted any character there, that character is dying.
All right.
I don't think Leia would have the effect on it. The narrative is driving that as opposed to who's standing there taking the blade through the chest.
It's a great theoretical question, though, Gareth. I like it. All right. Andrew Gleisner writes, what are the odds of a Jedi from another canon story will make an appearance in The Rise of Skywalker? Ahsoka, Cal, Ezra. I'm not going to... I don't like using the term zero because anything is always possible. Who knows if JJ woke up in the middle of the night craving a pizza slice and then had some weird idea. No, I bet I could bring it. It's possible, but not zero, but close to zero. So I don't see it happening. What do you think?
It's weird. Like they did a vintage styled action figure of Ahsoka Tano, and she looks like the live action version of her.
Right.
Photoreal. And it's not good. Doesn't look good. The Photoshop picture on the card, you're like, oh, it's cool, an Ahsoka. It doesn't look cool. Seeing that animated character in the live action form, it would just look weird to me. It's so intrinsically animated.
Right.
And that's how I know her. I think it's more jarring than it would do you good. Same thing with Kanan. Cal, I'm not through that game yet. I'm not that familiar nor attached to this character. I don't know what the potency of having Cal and that would be.
Right. But I don't think
I guess he's around, they're saying. I don't know. This is the same as having like Kyle Katarn or something. Like, cool. Who are you servicing? Who are you servicing? Like the 1/90th of the people that know Star Wars? Because not many people are familiar with the animated stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This is why I said I don't think you're going to see Cal in it.
That's fan service.
Yeah, I don't think what they will do is make the mistake of, oh, listen, everybody, if you want to act... This is why I don't think they're going to tie Mandalorian too much into Episode 9. If you want to understand what's going on in the new movie, you're going to have to get our Disney Plus service and go back and watch The Mandalorian. They're not going to do that.
No, that's disingenuous.
Yeah, it's very rude. Disingenuous.
I wouldn't do that.
All right. Christopher Lote writes, Palpatine was building a Force-sensitive clone army on Jakku. Rey was a clone that got away. Evil Rey is also one of the clones. I mean, listen, Christopher, that is not an unpopular theory. That is one that's been going around ever since we first saw those things. Listen, here are the primary things. Clone, in explaining and talking about the Dark Rey thing that we saw in that clip. Clone, Nightmare or Force Vision, and Face Value.
This reeks of sci-fi.
I mean, it's this...
Star Wars is fantasy, man. It's not sci-fi.
I mean, look, the Emperor, even in the EU... The Emperor has always been very obsessed with cloning.
They handled it in a very fantasy way.
Yeah, so it's a possibility. I don't know how we.
I have a good pal, Paul Bateman. Paul Bateman's a great art director, illustrator. He's a disciple of Ralph McQuarrie.
Okay. Oh, nice.
Awesome. Look up Paul Bateman. Paul Bateman and I talk Star Wars every day. He lives in England, and since the dawn of time, Paul Bateman insists that the Emperor was coming back like Ming the Merciless. He always cites Ming, undying, coming back, all different ways. He's always like, he's coming back and he's going to be the villain in this trilogy. And he's still believing that he's going to be a clone. And I am still against him being a clone. We're going to find out when this comes out. We've been talking about this for decades. I don't want to see him be a clone. I don't want to see any more leaning into clone. I don't think Rey is a clone. I think Rey is somebody and has to be somebody.
And I think the opposite.
Otherwise, it's arbitrary. And the reason she has to be somebody is because this whole trilogy has been about her being special. It's not about her being a nobody. The manufactured part of it is, in marketing, is she's a nobody. She's always been somebody special. She was chosen. For the Force to be completely democratic would be Rey can then turn and teach Poe. And you want to know some Force too? Anyone can do it. Let's all do Congo line Force. That's the complete democratization of the Force. Anyone can do it. Rey is special. Rey's had visions since she was born of a planet. She's had these abilities. She is chosen, no different than Anakin. She's a completely unspecial person, equivalent of Anakin being a slave on a junk planet, who has been tied to the Force her whole life. And that's how they've written it. This is not how I'm interpreting it. This is how they've written it. She's had visions of Octo, the whole what girl, all this stuff. She is somebody special. When Kylo gets in her head and he sees what he's seen, she's not a nobody that just happened to be like, oh, I can do something with the Force. This is cool. She was picked. The Force awakened in her. It's one of the meanings of the title. Rey is not the manifestation or the idealization of anyone can use the Force. She has been someone special in the way J.J. scripted this movie from the beginning. He then rewrote some of it and changed it. In her DNA and the way she's perceived by everyone around her, she is somebody special. And the way they've handled the Force has also yielded her being treated as somebody special and perceived as somebody special by everyone in the universe. So they haven't turned this Force over to the people in any way. I know they say that in their marketing. That's not what this movie's about. She's no different than Anakin. The only difference is Anakin, we knew he was a generation removed. So we knew why it was special. So if Rey has kids, it's just the same. It's like she's just a nobody that was chosen when she was born.
Okay, and here, let me give you a short thing about why I disagree.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you about the democratization of
They just
the
didn't
Force.
handle it. If that's what they were doing, they didn't write it properly.
I don't think it's a matter that anybody could be a Jedi. But I think what they did, particularly at the end of like The Last Jedi, when Barnstable Boy reaches out in the thing, I believe that was a sign that, a lot of people said, oh, so that kid's going to be in the new movie. No, it was just a sign that the Force
I heard he was
doing
going to be at one point.
Oh, I hope not.
He was.
But the Force is doing what it's always done throughout the history of the Jedi, that a child is born. Some of them will have, some of them will be born with Force sensitivity. Some will not. Jedi will identify those kids, bring them into the Jedi Temple, train them, blah, 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 blah. See, to me, when you're looking at Rey, when you look at all the history and legacy, whether you're looking at EU stuff or Legends, all the greatest Jedi in the history of the galaxy, 99.99% of them, were not born of a royal lineage. They weren't born. They were a child born with Force sensitivity, identified and grew in the Force and whatnot. And I've always believed that the idea of Rey being the next, your mom and dad, Princess or Lone Star, your parents were actually were kings and queens. You're a prince. I always felt like that to me is gaggable. That the whole notion that
John, it's fairy tale.
And I know it's fairy, but they've done it, and the whole I believe
and
they're
finishing
it
it. This is still part of the same fairy tale, John.
But in The Force Awakens, they bring it up pretty much that the dark rises, and the light rises to meet it. So to me, that was just the notion of the Force struggling to stay in balance. That is, this new dark Force wielder in Kylo Ren was arising.
Do you like her as a manifestation of the Force? Like she was produced in the same manner that Anakin was?
It makes me nervous. That makes me nervous.
I like that more than her being a nobody. I like her being a Solo or somebody else more than I like her being a nobody. And the reason being is because it is still essentially, we're still living in Anakin Skywalker's story. No matter what you want to say about it, this is the Roman numeral trilogy. This is the tail end of 6 films that have been Anakin's story. To me, it's the biggest missed opportunity ever if Hayden Christensen is not even in this movie in a voice level, being the third act of that character's life, imparting some type of grandfather or fatherly wisdom. He has to be a part of this thing. That's a massive mistake if they don't do that just because they didn't like Hayden's performance in a movie. That just completely throws out the whole 6 other films. He has to be a part of this story. More than just a goddamn helmet sitting on a shelf. That's cool. But the fact that he is so important is important. They have not separated themselves from the familial importance of this movie. And the other movies, it's not about nobility. It's about familial love. And that is the point of it. Being somebody, familial love is key to this whole thing. Luke rejects his elders and says, I'm not going to kill my father, even though I'm standing in front of him and everyone wants me to. You want me to go kill my father? I'm going to throw my saber away and put my faith in love. And what unlocks Anakin is that he's not Jedi nor Sith. He believes in love, something that the Jedi couldn't guide him down that path towards accepting. And the Sith could never even believe it was going to happen. That's how the Emperor was blindsided. It's love. I'm not talking about nobility or bloodline. I'm talking about the relationship of family. That's what Star Wars is. You can say it's like Fast and Furious family, but that's what it was. It doesn't matter what your lineage is. Rey has to be a part of family. And I don't care if she's clearly not nobility. She's not a princess or anything. Princess Leia is not a princess either. She's the daughter of a fucking slave.
Well, she was adopted.
Adopted. It's all bullshit. That's not real. She's a nobody. Rey is a nobody. It's familial connection. That's what I care about. So it's not, princess and picked and all that stuff. It's just familial connection. That unlocks love. That's what's going to make Rey different.
All right. I disagree, but I'm going to let you have the
and
final
word on that. I
word
guarantee she's going to be related to somebody, or the ball has not just been dropped, it has been thrown away.
It'll be the absolute best move on their part. All right, but I said I would give you the last word on it. I just took it back.
You know what? Blow me away. Make me wrong. I just want the best story. I don't care if I'm right. I want the best story.
Yeah, and by the way, what I love in movies sometimes is when they do something I thought they would never do, or something I would think you can't do this in a movie, and then they do it and it works.
Sure, I want that.
Or when I think you have to do this in a movie and they don't do it and it works. I love it when that happens. So let's see what happens when they come into.
I want the best story. Period. Make me wrong.
All right, we are now over time, so I'm going to burn through these next bunch of questions, guys, here, because I want to make sure I get through all of them here. Where are we at here? Timothy Platt writes, I don't know if you read the new Force Collector book, but I loved it and highly recommend it. That's the one that happens prior to this new one.
I've downloaded it on Audible. I want it.
I've downloaded on Audible. Ann and I are driving to Las Vegas on Thursday, and I've got it all queued up. So that's.
Is it a long one?
I don't know. I haven't checked.
It's a junior book, right?
Because some of them have been like
it's a smaller format.
14 hours. I hope it's like 5 hours long because I want to get it all done in my
I'm trying to
Vegas.
get it through all this stuff before the 19th.
But I'm hearing good things about it, Timothy, actually. So thanks for the recommendation. Laser Pants Toy Junk. I love the name. Kyle, why did you stop appearing on Rebel Force Radio?
Oh. You were just a guest on Star Wars. I love those guys. We've been friends for forever. I kind of took a mass break from talking about Star Wars. It wasn't informing me in a positive way. It wasn't healthy. I did not like getting attacked for having an opinion I felt a very valid opinion on a movie and a franchise that means the world to me. I didn't like getting attacked or thrown under the bus for just purely having a valid opinion that is not based on attacking anyone. It's based on nuance and story and form and editing and all these things. That movie felt atypical to me, like a 3-hour Star Wars movie. It wasn't cut like a Star Wars movie. It wasn't paced like a Star Wars movie. I'm allowed to talk about these things as a fan, and it was a hostile environment. There's a subsect of people that are fanatical.
The whole Star Wars environment has been a pretty hostile environment.
But there's a subsect of people that are fanatical about it that don't want you to have a different opinion than them. And if you do, they're going to attack your character. And they're going to say, you're MAGA or you're alt-right. You're like, hold on a second. I'm a filmmaker.
Dude, you should
and
see
I'm allowed
the
to
stuff
talk
I've got
about
for saying that I like the movie.
I know.
You should see some of the shit I got for saying that I like
It's not
that
healthy
movie.
either way. And I think it's a situation that could have been avoided if everyone involved were classier and kinder about it. I'm talking about the people who promoted and made the movie that go out there and talk shit about fans that don't like it, and the fans who are absolute assholes for talking to a filmmaker the way they do. It's disgusting. Like Rian Johnson that's his life. It's his career. And it's not kind or right to go out there and attack the man. You can comment on the nature of the movie because it's art, period. You're allowed to. We're all allowed to go talk about how we feel about a movie, period. You can't control the conversation and silence people because you don't like the opinion. I've come around to the fact where I'm going to talk about it. It never sit well with me, that film. There's ways to have done it better. There are avoidable ways to, why we're in this predicament, it's collective. It's not one side or the other side. Fandom,
the whole
Star Wars
fandom
fandom let me
unhealthy
down
for a while
in a lot of ways, and I found healthy ways to talk about Star Wars with friends, and keep it private. And I want to talk to you about it because I respect your opinion. Look, we have very different opinions on it. And are we friends?
Yeah, but
do I love you? Are we civil?
Yeah.
Can you change my mind about stuff? I'm open to changing how I feel about it. I want to change how I feel about Last Jedi. Instead of liking 70% of the movie, I want to like all 100% about it.
I don't need you to change your mind
but
for us
like,
to get
and
along.
if it happens, great. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, I'm gonna still show my kids the movie, and we're still gonna watch it. I have a giant Porg in my house, bigger than me. Like, I still buy all the toys. I'm still supportive. I've read the novelizations of each, the main novel and the junior novel twice. Look, I just had to change the way I approached it because I didn't like being personally attacked. Well, look, and I respect that other people were attacked for having contrary opinions. So that's not right.
I had a show that I was running regularly called Star Wars Talk Tuesdays, and it got so vile that I just said, now, I don't give two squirts of piss what other people think about my opinions, but it got so personal and so vile. I just don't need it
in my life.
I had to stop the show. I just said, you know what? It's become, the Star Wars fandom has become such an unhealthy place for a while that it brings me no joy anymore doing that show. So I thought, you know what? This isn't fun for me anymore. Congratulations to the people who wanted to make it a non-fun place for everybody, regardless of which side of the aisle you were on. Congratulations, you did it. And I stepped away from doing my show, and you stepped away from it for a while. And
I found a way to be content without that aspect of it. And I'll probably go back into talking more about Star Wars, but having to go on a show like every other week and talk to people, I can still talk to people privately. And for a while, I just didn't want to talk about Star Wars at all.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, you and I, we went through the prequel era.
Yeah.
And obviously the prequel era was not a unifying time for Star Wars fans. Let's call it that.
No, it was divisive.
But I don't recall the fandom turning on itself. Like, I know there was a lot of division about whether, about how the quality of the movies, but I don't recall in that era.
Like I said, we did healthy panels where we would like have people come. We talked positively about how you could look at the prequels in another way, maybe discover things. My goal was I've converted people like Paul Bateman or different people that didn't like the prequels, and now they're like, I look at them in a new way because of your affinity for them and the way you've pointed me in a direction. But it wasn't, like you're saying, it wasn't like that. And right now, it's like it's equative to our politics. It's like you're on one side or the other, and you just write everybody else off, and there's no kindness, and there's no commonality, and there's no acceptance that at the core of it, we're all still humans or fans with our own feelings and our own life experiences that we bring to the table. And we are allowed to be nuanced. We don't have to be one or the other.
I feel like it's
like
improving
this
a bit.
Big battle in Braveheart. It's us, and you know what I mean? It's like you're allowed to appreciate it in your own way, at your own pace, and change your opinion.
All right. Got to keep running here. Zelda Master writes, I was saying, is that the right one? Yes, I was saying Return of the Jedi. I was saying Return of the Jedi tonight. Skywalker comes out 3 weeks from Thursday. I get it. That's from an earlier question you sent in, and say you're watching Return of the Jedi tonight. Okay, which is actually my all-time favorite Star Wars movie.
An underrated Star Wars movie, I'll say. The most underrated.
Look,
it's a badass, bold, independent movie made with $35 million of George Lucas's personal smackaroos, and he took notes from no motherfuckers.
Yep.
And it was a big risk, and he made the greatest villain of all time. He humanized him, and then he created the new greatest villain of all time, and we're going to see him again in 2019.
Haskell is saying something that I don't recall, saying the final Rise of Skywalker teaser, you hear Vader breathing at the end. I don't recall that. Do you?
You know what? I might have noticed something like that.
Unless you're saying Revenge of the Sith, but I don't think that's what you mean.
Skywalker. Maybe there was.
Maybe if I go back and listen to it again.
I was so pumped. I watched that. I watched it at a friend's house, and he had a big screen, and we were like, yeah, let's watch it before we play D&D. We watched it. And I was like, oh, let's watch it again. I turned around, and everyone was like, what was that, man? I was like, what? I loved it. And they're like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm like,
I liked it, except for the lack of Palpatine.
Everyone experiences it so differently. I was like, press play again. Let's go. And people were like, wait, before we go, what is going on? Why is she running through the jungle? Who's the bad guy left? Like, nobody knew what was going on.
Yeah. And that was one of my criticisms of the trailer.
What we bring into this is different levels of fandom and experience.
No narrative being given it. That was one of my problems.
It needs narrative. I hope they introduce that in the next 3 weeks.
Then the teaser that just came out, the They Fly Now scene that they put out yesterday.
It's great, but no narrative.
I watched it, I'm like, oh my God, that's fantastic. And then I'm getting some of my viewers saying, what was that?
What do you think is the conflict of this movie?
And that's what they need to put in the marketing.
What is our Act 1 turning point? Give me the Act 1. I don't know what that is.
I agree. I don't even know what this movie's about, and I think they needed to do that.
Just do it. They have time.
Okay, Timbula the Spider Monkey writes, is that where we're at? Yes. My favorite character is King Oh, that was obvious for the John Campea Show. All right, Bryce Wagner writes, hey, Kyle, out of all the Star Wars fans you know, am I the most charming, best dressed, or humble? Great show, John. Keep up I'm assuming you know Bryce.
Bryce Wagner is a Southern gentleman and a filmmaker. He's made a couple of great documentaries. He made one on Jimmy Buffett fans.
Oh, really?
He made one on Life After Porn called Exit Life After Porn. And I've known Bryce for a long time. He legitimately wept during Mandalorian and some Rise of Skywalker trailers.
And apparently a very well-dressed man, apparently.
Bryce wears a lot of seersucker and pastels. And he's living a good Jimmy Buffett lifestyle in Los Angeles.
All right, Jason writes, what if they use the Jedi Inquisitors in the Obi-Wan series? We see more of the Jedi Purge as they track down the remaining Jedi and run into Obi-Wan. I don't think they run into Obi-Wan because if they ran into Obi-Wan, Vader would know that Obi-Wan was still out there. And at that point, that was still theoretical to Vader.
I think Obi-Wan could run into them.
You think so?
I would love to see.
I think they're going to have a totally different story.
I want the Obi-Wan trilogy to be extremely streamlined, small, focused. I'd contemplate what would an Obi-Wan story. I wrote an outline for something years ago that I wanted to do as a comic book, and it was really about how Obi-Wan only took one mission off-world of extreme importance.
Right. Which I would be interested in.
Because his task is really to watch over Luke.
Right.
But there's something bigger than that he realizes he could actually, that would affect Leia and something else. So he has to go deal with that. And it puts the Luke thing in a little bit of jeopardy because he's exposing himself. So if it was very streamlined and small, like a samurai going to do one thing, I don't want to see Obi-Wan going on a bunch of adventures. I think that's where you're getting into.
You don't want to see an episodic show. You don't want to see,
I don't want to see
this week's villain on Obi-Wan.
Yeah, like a little tighter than even Mandalorian. You know, he's a lot of planet jumping. You know.
Well, we'll see what Deborah Chow has in store. Watching her direct that last episode of The Mandalorian there, I'm very excited about what she's going to do with Obi-Wan. Okay, let's see here. Matthew Grant writes, my favorite Star Wars villain is General Grievous. He was ruthless in the Cartoon Network's 2D Clone Wars. Loved him in the Clone Wars series. Where they gave him more depth, need more Grievous. I never liked the character. I wish I did.
He's okay. I know he's supposed to be a precursor Vader, like a way of this cyborg android technology having some organic material.
And a non-Force user who's great at using lightsabers. That part was interesting to me.
I like that. The idea that he was this former warlord who got this body kind of built around him. So it's in similar design to what he used to look like. There's a good Clone Wars episode where they go into Grievous's lair. It's called Grievous's Lair. But like I said, not my favorite character. I'm not a fan of the cough. One of the reasons why Last Jedi why Rise of or Revenge of the Sith hasn't ascended higher. The character in time hasn't sat well with me. I did like him in the 2D Gendy series. He was great. He's not a bad character. He's just not my favorite of the villains.
Jonathan Thompson writes, sorry for getting the blood boiling there, John, but glad to be reassured that it's all bullshit. After seeing The Sin, that's the name of the third episode of The Mandalorian, I'm excited to see more of Deborah Chow's work in Star Wars. Don't worry. Yeah, sorry. It's just that I've had so many people writing to me saying, John, did you hear about the people getting up and walking out of test screens? Like, it's such bullshit. So I wasn't taking it out on you, Jonathan, but thanks for putting that out.
What test screening? Can they even name a city where it happened?
Oh, of course they can.
Can two people name that they were in the same screening?
Oh, of course they can.
They can't, no.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, I remember when Captain Marvel came out. And there was a segment of people very upset that it was doing well. And there was this infamous picture that started circulating purporting this myth that Disney was buying off all the ticket sellers, reporters, and that the movie theaters are actually empty. And this one picture came out, this an infamous picture that was going around of an empty movie, literally an empty movie theater. Said, and it's basically, I'm here at the first day screening of Captain Marvel and nobody's here. Well, then our friend, you guys know him very well, Dan Merle from Schmodown, he's over at Screen Junkies. He did this great background report on it saying, turns out the guy who put up this picture has for 6 months, here's his tweets about the upcoming Captain Marvel movie and about Brie Larson. And it was this guy who's just like hates Brie Larson and hates the idea of this movie, and just everything. Hey,
people have so much time for hatred.
And Dan was like, so you're telling me this guy bought an opening day ticket to go see Captain Marvel, and it just happened to be an empty... Anyway, that's what reminds me of this whole thing with the test screenings. It's like, yeah. So don't worry about it, Jonathan. I appreciate that you sent that in. Ben Rayner writes, did I see Ahsoka Tano in a melted scene in Sith? Did I see Ahsoka Tano in a melted... do you know what that means?
A melted scene.
A melted scene in Sith. In
Revenge of the Sith?
Revenge of the Sith?
A melted scene.
I don't know what we're talking about, Ben. Sorry about that.
Well, she's around after that.
All right. And then somebody just decided to send in money called Test. Well, thank you, Test, for supporting the show on that level. And guys, that will do it for this week's installment of Dark Side, Light Side. Thank you guys so much for being here. And thank you to all of you guys who sent in questions, not just because you gave us great fun things to talk about, but also because you supported the channel along the way, and we appreciate you deeply for that. I, of course, want to thank our special guest this week, just one of the coolest dudes in the business. If you guys have not seen, by the way, I've told this story before, but one of the coolest gifts I ever got, I was a fan of the movie Fanboys. And a mutual acquaintance of Kyle's of mine, and I had never met Kyle yet. I didn't know Kyle. And a mutual acquaintance of mine was showing up, came to my place to help celebrate the release of a little indie project I had done. And he had brought this autographed poster of Fanboys, autographed by the director, Kyle Newman. And so I was lucky enough to meet him afterwards, but also writer of like my favorite D&D book of all time, Art and Arcanum. You guys should absolutely check that out. Make sure you check out his new role-playing game again on I always mispronounce...
Gaghead.
Gaghead. Check it out there.
G head.
And otherwise from that, where can people follow you and your exploits online if they want to follow Kyle Newman?
Kyle_Newman on Instagram and Twitter. Always down to talk Star Wars, movies, Dungeons and Dragons, Arsenal Football Club.
You do tweet a lot about soccer. I've seen that too.
I love the English League. Big soccer fan. And Facebook. I have a Facebook fan page. A lot of Star Wars chat over there. So.
And I should point out too, just as a side plug. Yeah. Another reason for celebration over at the Newman household. Your wife just had her show renewed for another season.
Yes.
The show
Black
is
Summer on Netflix. If you've not seen Black Summer, you got to check it out. I think it's a really bold, I wouldn't say reinvention, but it's a bold new way of looking at the apocalyptic zombie genre. Because when she first told about it, I was like, what's going to be different about it? And then when I started to see what John Hyams, the director of most of the shows, was doing, it was just this new immersive visual way, visceral way of getting into it, very personal and small and intimate. And it's got season 2 just announced, so it's coming back.
By the way, I see people writing, who's his wife?
My wife is Jamie King.
Jamie King is your
so check out Black Summer. I'm absolutely impressed by the show. I'm a big fan of what those guys are doing. It just has like it's just a filmic quality, you know, and they're just trying to push boundaries with it. I think they're going to do some really exciting things with season 2. From what I'm hearing, I'm like,
it's not a small deal to have a show on Netflix that actually gets renewed. So that's not a small thing.
It's doing well. It's finding an audience, and they're going to do something special with season 2. So,
well, Kyle, listen, thank you so much for being here and taking Christian's place this week. We really appreciate it. I hope you'll come back and talk Star Wars with us some more.
Maybe after the ball drops, we'll see what happens.
You got to come back after that. After that. And guys, thank you to all of you guys for being here. You guys can just follow me, of course, online on all the different social medias, simply at John Campea. That will do it for us for now, guys. Thank you so much for being here. My name is John Campea, and just because somebody asked me to do it, I have spoken.